here I am shortly after 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Hopefully, Grim isn't streaming right now. See if I can share this link. So I'm doing a little later than today. My daughter was sick this morning. So here I am. Anybody want to chat? Jump on. Let me share these links for anyone that wants to jump on. Let me also try this. Trying to see how I can paste this in the Discord without pasting the tweet. I don't want to do that. Can I share? I can paste this in the Discord. That's not what I'm trying to do. Without. Stop it. All right. If I copy link. Ooh, let me try that. All right, let's try this. Oh, stop it. I don't want to scan text. What am I doing? This is annoying. I have to learn how to use technology better. So it's only allowing me to share the tweet. Possibly because usually I share it before I go live. Now I'm sharing it afterwards. So maybe that's part of the issue right now. All right, let's see if anybody jumps on today. I'll put some music on. Lower the volume. Hello, how are you this afternoon? Is it afternoon where you are? Where are you? Indiana. I'm okay today. A little bit all over the place. I'm behind on things because my daughter is still having a fever, so she had to stay home from school again. And yesterday she seemed to be doing a lot better, so I was assuming she would be going back to school today. But that's not the case. So I had to be with her this morning, take care of her, feed her, all that stuff, which I'm fine with, but it kind of like throws me off for the day. So there's probably several things that I haven't gotten done yet, but I'll just have to do them later. How are you today? She feels mostly okay. I mean, whenever she's sick, it's hard to notice because she's just still so chipper, but more that she has the fever, it's sporadic. So most of the days she'll be fine, and then all of a sudden she'll feel warm when she gives me a hug, and I'm like, oh, she has a fever. Did you watch Paul's video on it? Or we talked a lot about it today, or on the video today. I watched like most of it. So what are your thoughts? I think that there also might be some good that'll come out of it. I mean, at least it gives an opportunity for a more established place for diverse thought when it comes to a lot of global things, if that makes sense. I'm curious as to what you mean by that, virtual sanctuary. What is interesting about that, or what do you like about that as a possibility? I understand. I find myself to be maybe a little bit more reckless in the interweb sphere. But I find myself to be slightly reckless in most social environments, whether they be online or embodied.
purpose, not knowing worth isn't green, pushing the purses. The been through the dirt and been bit by the serpent. The circus of an earth is furnished with merchants. Hard to see past them open surface but searching in the hopes of being reimbursed for their burdens. Cause they're well versed.
The church is kind of a mediator or buffer zone between individuals and states. What do you see would be the benefit of that? I'm curious about that. Your brother being a pastor and your views being problematic for him. Well, so your views are just problematic for him in terms of like you don't agree, or your views could cause problems for him as a pastor. Seems that you are not alone in that in this little corner. What? Oh, wait, I'm not trying to knock. Yeah, like I said, you're not alone. Is it a Trinitarian issue or something different? More so, I've spoken to a few people that have problems with Nicaea. I was interested. I was actually chatting briefly with my wife about Nicaea, mainly in terms of the issue that Sam's been having as a Unitarian. Ironically enough, when we put the liturgy together for our church service, we didn't include the Nicene Creed. We actually, instead of the Nicene Creed, we did the Apostles' Creed, mainly because it was shorter, and we've been trying to do this thing about contextualizing liturgy for an urban context. So some people might say that, well, the Catholics do liturgy in an urban context, but a lot of Catholic churches have been leaving some of the, I think there's maybe one Catholic church that still has Mass in my neighborhood. So anyways, we just felt the Apostles' Creed was shorter, and so it might be easier for people to digest. And so ironically enough, those having trouble with the Nicene Creed would have no problem at my church. Yeah, we talked about that a few days ago. But that's also a slightly different problem than what Neutrino is mentioning. Yeah, and that becomes a really tricky thing for human beings in general, is that oftentimes we do find legit issues with things, but then you use those legit issues for ulterior purposes, i.e. running away from God. It doesn't mean that those issues aren't legit or that there aren't legit difficulties with those issues. But then other people will look at that and say, oh, well, you're just doing this, therefore we won't even consider the legitimate questions that you might have about any issues. I actually had a church try to discipline me because they had no records of my tithe. And I had this thing about money at the time where I felt like I was wrestling with the idea of like tax exemptions for tithe. And so I was like, well, I want to start giving tithe in a way that nobody can see what I'm giving and give me some kind of credit in return. So I was tithing only in cash, and I wasn't indicating in an envelope that it was for me. So I was tithing. I just wasn't leaving any evidence of it, kind of purposefully. And oddly enough, the elders of that church attempted to use that against me for other things. And of course, I had no defense. I'm giving cash. You don't know that I'm tithing. It doesn't always sound very believable. Yeah, if you ever want to drive over to Illinois and visit my church, it's not exactly in a safe area, but you don't have to worry about the Nicene Creed. Amen. Well, I mean, to a certain degree, I would affirm that. Obviously, I'm planting a church in a different denomination now. Whether or not, this church grows legs and continues to run, I am happy to be in the denomination that I'm at, Christian Reformed Church, North America. But that would have never happened. I would have never been here if that church hadn't attempted to use such tactics. So maybe that's why God led me towards that giving of cash only at that time to eventually get me here. Sounds very Calvinistic. I hope Hank is listening. I tagged him in my tweet.
Hey,
Lost Cause, looks like you're in a different room.
yep, finally got to move on. I don't know. I might turn off my camera because this is a weird room. Figured it might be to watch. How's it going?
I'm all right.
Can you hear me?
Busy.
Oh, okay.
Busy day taking care of my sick daughter, but she's asleep right now.
Nice. I'm painting a night purple, which is kind of cool. Much cooler than white.
Yeah. Although though white paint is starting to make a comeback in residential.
Oh yeah, people are painting their outside houses white, and you know it looks chic and clean and all that when it's done for a little bit. It's a big mistake to do, especially here in Missouri, where you get, I mean, same thing with Illinois, where you get all 4 seasons and you get them hard.
Yep.
So it's just like, you know, I think that was a trend at one point. I don't know when, but I've seen older stuff that are the outside white and they don't look too good anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I get it. It's something to do with COVID. Everybody, that's what I think. That's my theory.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, a lot of people have been doing white on the interior and then doing allow for accent walls.
Yep. Yeah, it's something about everybody wants something very, this is literally what they say, is clean.
Yeah. What is so this person put is LC in 2001 Space Odyssey. I don't know what LC means or what it stands for.
Lost Cause, I think.
Ah, okay. There you go.
Are
you in 2001 Space Odyssey right now? The camera view kind of has that effect right now.
Good. There you go. I wanted my name on YouTube to be Lost Cause. I didn't know it would change my name for everything. And I'm regretting it because it's kind of difficult to change it back, I feel like. Because it took me a while to figure out how to change my name in the first place.
Yeah, my wife and my sister are huge fans of Joanna Gaines. I forget what their company is called, but they have their own section in Target. And my wife loves that section.
Very cool. Did you see it's on topic with what you were talking about like, I don't know, being worried about the Nicene Creed or something. Mm-hmm. Did you watch any of the Paul video with Andrea with the bangs at all?
You know what? I only caught like the tail end of it, and I actually jumped in. I didn't jump in it, but I was commenting towards the end of it. But yeah, I only caught the last few minutes of it.
The last bit was kind of what I was into anyways, because when Paul asked her about church and stuff, it was like the same thing. It's like just because I was so much into the Peugeot stuff, I started looking into Orthodoxy, but I was kind of intelligent enough to realize I'm making a super Protestant move by doing this. And so now I'm like, literally, I feel what she was saying is like, I feel super torn, like kind of ripped to shreds in the mind almost. Like I'm overthinking it. And I also, at first I thought I was clever because I recognized that. I was like, oh, I'm being Protestant, blah, blah, blah. And then I had a moment, very weird, that she mentioned the same thing over Christmas, where I went back to my church that I grew up at. And I really didn't like it. I was like, oh gosh, this is everything that I really don't like anymore. And it's a mega church, so there's no real like incentive to stay.
Yeah.
And so, but it's such a weird thing because I also recognize that some of my hesitancy, I guess, about Orthodoxy was like, well, I am kind of like you said, it's a legitimate question, but you are like manipulating it almost to use it to just stay away. And so kind of the conclusion that I've come to, and this is still very Protestant, is it's really about the people. And so if I'm out in California where I have really good friends that are all Orthodox guys, I would go Orthodox. I would become a catechumen and I would probably become Orthodox because of the people, not because of their creed or whatever that they say they became Orthodox for. It's, well, I really like you guys, and I feel, what's the word for it? I just am close to God when I have people there holding me accountable to that.
Mm.
Here, I don't feel the same way about the Orthodox churches here in Missouri. As you could imagine, they're not quite lively with young folks.
Yeah.
You can go to an Orthodox church in California and everybody's like, yeah, I came here because of Peugeot. And then here they're like, I don't know who Peugeot is. I was born in Armenia or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm just like, yeah, where the heck do I go? And I thought about Catholicism too, but it's just the same thing where it's like, I'm so American. There's something anti-Catholic in my blood, I guess. That is just like, I don't know. So I'm just shredded to pieces kind of in the mind.
Yeah. Have you
About
what tradition did you come out of?
It's so Southern Baptist, but
Southern
it's one of
Baptist?
those things where they're very odd. They're not the normal Southern Baptist. Like the congregation is, you know, where it's like the congregation, some of them,
Yeah.
they got hurt bad by the culture war stuff.
Okay.
So like some of the congregation is, I mean, you'd almost think Pentecostal, and then some of them are like super kind of woke Christian, and so they dropped their Southern Baptist thing, so they just go as Pleasant Valley Church. And then when the whole sex scandal thing with the Southern Baptist thing happened that I kind of wasn't even paying attention to, they totally dropped being Southern Baptist. So now they're just some non-denominational
Okay.
mega church.
You ever consider Reformed?
To be honest, the only other thing that is attractive to me is like, and if you knew me well, this would make perfect sense, is like Pentecostals. Which I know that can feel like a big swing from Orthodoxy, but I told my dad multiple times is like, I would be the happiest as like Orthocostal, is something like that. Like
what is attractive to you about the Pentecostal?
It's real. Like religion is real. It's not all in your head. I just like that. I like the heart behind it. I like that, you know, when you have questions or whatever, they're like, what? You know, people aren't like, well, what's the symbolism of the, blah, blah, blah. And I love that world and stuff, but I've just gotten exhausted with it because they seem to kind of explain away everything where it's just like, I don't know, Jesus did a miracle, dude. It's what it is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my attraction, I suppose.
Yeah. One of the things that I've come to appreciate about like the Christian Reformed Church specifically, the only Reformed experience I have would be Christian Reformed Church, Limited Art Reformed Church of America, and then the PCA. Is that in the Christian Reformed Church there is space for a lot of the heady stuff, similar to PCA. PCA is very, very heady. A lot of emphasis on logic and whatnot.
Right.
But with this in the CRC, that is tapered quite a bit. So, for example, in the CRC, there's been a huge movement of entire Korean churches moving from the PCA into the CRC, and part of that is most Korean churches, although they have a higher form of theology, their worship practices and music practices tend to be very charismatic. And so they found it easier to be in the CRC because they can still hold on to their higher theological and philosophical traditions, but feel more at home being able to worship in a more charismatic way. So it seems like there's more flexibility within the worship, or at least the musical and arts and music aspect of a CRC church than there is within the PCA. So I wonder if that actually might fit more what you're looking for.
Well, I think you said worship a couple times, and I guess that's the main thing is worship in either Orthodox, Pentecostal, even like traditional Catholicism is just more attractive. I've learned, the more that I've learned about theology, the more it's like kind of useless, practically speaking. It's like cool to think about, but the worship is what attracts me the most to whatever church I would like to go to. And so it's like either liturgical, charismatic, just something that's, I just really didn't like what I grew up with. I didn't like the music. I never have.
Yeah, because the church I grew up in, we have a liturgy that would be similar to anything you'd experience in a Catholic church, Orthodox church. But we try to be creative musically. I mean, both my wife and I are musicians, so we like to be creative with that. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Good. Just woke up. I think I got borderline sick from my roommate, but you know, God is good.
Amen.
I'm making some Theraflu right now.
Andrew, you said that you were exploring Orthodoxy, didn't you?
Yep.
How's that?
Give me 1 sec.
You're all good. No worries.
Gavin says there's no CRC churches in Alabama, and it seems to be confirmed. Yet.
There you go.
The Dutch people haven't moved that far down, but the CRC is starting to diversify. So I wonder where that will lead us. Maybe to Alabama. All I know about Alabama is Forrest Gump. So it holds a special place in my heart because I'm a huge Forrest Gump fan.
That movie has very dedicated fans. My brother loves that movie.
It's a phenomenal movie. Hi, Hezi. It's good to see you commenting. I got your message, and I'm eager to talk to you more about that. But yeah, no, Forrest Gump, man. Whew. That might be one of the. No, that's probably the second movie that I found myself crying at.
Yeah, that'll do it.
The first one was Selena.
I haven't heard of that
familiar
one.
with that one.
I am not.
It's about a Latina singer that was like, she was about to cross over into the American scene, and actually she has some songs that got on American radio, but it was after she was killed.
Wow.
But the way they shoot the movie, oh man, it's like she's all happy-go-lucky one day, and then all of a sudden the screen goes black, and then I think there might be a gunshot like that you hear or something. Then you just hear her song, her English track that became popular after she died, like slow song, and then like a single rose falling on this empty stage. But it's like the whole movie is about her life, so you see her like from a kid growing up, and then all of a sudden she's dead, and you really feel like it hits pretty hard.
Yeah, we love that here in America. You got to have a tragic young demise, and then you'll be immortalized for some reason.
Oh yeah, and she was. And there was actually a bit of controversy around the movie because she was Mexican, but she was played by Jennifer Lopez, who did a great job playing her. But Jennifer Lopez is Puerto Rican, and so it's like, well, why are you having a Puerto Rican play a Mexican? Wow. Yeah, it was J-Lo. Both J-Lo and Salma Hayek got really popular at the same time. But they actually have different. It's interesting. If you're a Latino and you're very familiar with Latinos, and especially different cultures, they're actually built very differently. So I can tell the difference really easily between J-Lo and Salma Hayek. But I would say that Selena was probably built similarly in terms of her physique, similar to J-Lo.
Interesting. I didn't know there was that much of a difference.
Oh yeah. Oh, there. I mean, and obviously they're generalities, right?
Sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of Puerto Ricans that look very similar to Mexicans, in many ways. But generally speaking, Puerto Ricans tend to be bottom heavy.
Huh.
They have bigger butts. The U.S. wear mutts of some sort. Yes. But yeah, I'm a sucker for sob story movies. Forrest Gump, Selena. They
I
get
dig
me.
it.
There was one week I remember when I was single where HBO, I think it was HBO or Showtime, one of them was showing like Forrest Gump every day of the week. And I remember it would come on when I got home from work. So it was like on that same time. It just happened to be the time I was getting on from work. So I'd turn on my television and it would be on. And then I couldn't turn it off. So I ended up watching Forrest Gump like 5 days in a row one week. Excuse me 1 second. My wife's with me. I'm going to turn off my mic.
No worries. Andrew, I don't know if you're there now. I can't see very well from up here. But I asked you about how's your adventure into Orthodoxy going?
So I did for those who don't know, Coptic it's pretty much just Greek for Egyptian. So it's like the official church from 2,000 years ago in Egypt.
The Coptic church?
Orthodox church, yeah.
Okay.
How's that going? I am still in catechumenate. In the beginning, I went to a couple of Vespers services. The priest figured that I was pretty interested in Orthodoxy because I didn't go running out screaming after the first couple times, I think the people there are very used to Protestants coming in and then like leaving because I went away for a week during Thanksgiving and then I came back and they're like, oh my gosh, you're still here. Catechumenate. Catechumenate's going pretty well. Usually it would be like over by now, but I'm just a stickler. I want to, make sure that I'm fully Orthodox before they baptize me. Yeah. I'm doing good with Vesper services. Like I'm starting to get the chanting down. Like when you chant, there's like different tones or whatever. So like different styles, you could say. So I can't get my voice to the right like pitch or whatever, but I can get like the rhythms right. So what usually happens is that like if there's a good amount of people, nobody can tell. But if there's only a couple at the end of the night, it's like either sometimes at the end of the night I'm like the only one. Usually it's just because the other people want to rest their voice, like they're deacons and they have to chant tomorrow. So it ends up being kind of scuffed. But it's not too bad. Liturgy though is absolutely killing me. Because the cops like have been without catechumens for so long that they just removed the whole like chasing the catechumens out of liturgy part, So what usually happens is the liturgy of the word ends somewhere and they start preparing for communion and they're saying stuff like make us worthy for your holy body, and I'm like, yeah, make me worthy too, please, and then everyone starts lining up and exiting the pews, and then I'm just like back there in the pews, yeah. So it's kind of a struggle.
Yeah, I was actually the same way with that whole thing, which I'm fine with. I don't mind that that's how they do it. I actually kind of find it admirable that they take it seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they don't let me take communion. I just wish they like formally chased me out, you know, because when I'm like standing there in the pews, it's like, I don't know.
Well, have you ever
People-
thought about
it's-
taking the initiative and just stepping
Just
out?
walking yourself out. Yeah. Thing is, like, I should probably figure out like when the liturgy of the word ends and then just leave there, you know. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
get
then I
that.
gotta like pack up all my stuff, you know, that I took out of my pockets and put my shoes back on and everything, you know. Yeah.
It's the awkward egg.
I guess what makes me a little hesitant more than most about Orthodoxy is like I was a pastor's kid, and I got to kind of see religion from the adult's perspective more than most younger kids. And I just know there's a lot of big changes that can happen in an adult's life. And so, I don't know. I just get kind of nervous about like, I don't know. It's kind of like Orthodoxy is more like a marriage, where like Protestants is more like you're just dating around forever, kind of, unless you're like a staff. And so, I don't know. I'm probably like way too cynical about it, but I just see some people, and it is kind of like a cynical voice in the back of my head that's like, yeah, are they, just riding the wave, or are they going to be here? And
Yeah, the tricky thing with Protestantism is that it's so big and it includes way too much. Like, you said, Protestant, they're riding the wave, something, and some are, right? Some Protestant traditions are very, I mean, that's a huge part of the evangelical movement is just the consumerism. We're trying to find a church that suits me, not necessarily something to be a part of. I would say that's not the CRC, or at least not a large chunk of it. And to a certain degree, that's kind of what the CRC is wrestling with right now in terms of trying to figure out, okay, where do we draw certain lines? And because we're not interested in letting people come in and play church, and that consumerism type culture. And I struggle with that as a church planter, because in order to be a successful church planter, people have to come to my church. But I also don't want people to be consumers at my church. Like, oh, I like this preacher, therefore I'm going to come. It's like, no, I want people to come in and be part of it. So I'm doing this little dance with playing with marketing, trying to get people in the door. But where's that line? At what point am I just selling something?
Yeah, and I wasn't actually saying that about Protestantism. I was saying that about the Protestants moving into Orthodoxy is it feels consumeristic. And they get into the memes and all this stuff, and it's just such a turnoff to me. Like, here's what's funny and ironic to me is at the Chino event, Jonathan Peugeot's giving a tour of the church that I went to out there that I really liked, St. Andrews. Well, their parish priest was a Protestant pastor for like 13 years, So it's just, I just find all that stuff goes very deep. Like, it's not
the Anglican church that I was a part of for several years. The priest was a Southern Baptist pastor for most of his career. Joined the Anglican church maybe in the 60s, I think. And so, yeah, it was interesting and he had obviously a different flavor than some of the people that have been Anglican for life.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that to knock the priest or anything. I'm saying that just because it's like,
well, I actually liked him as an Anglican priest more than I liked most Anglican priests that I've encountered. But part of it was that he was looking for unifying aspects. Like, there were aspects of him coming from the Southern Baptist experience that he still valued. But there were certain things that he found in Anglicanism that he felt made him better as a shepherd, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and so
totally.
I learned a lot from him, both from things that I sense he drew from the Southern Baptist tradition and what he got from Anglicanism. And so for me, I draw from my EV free background, this new CRC background from the Anglican Church, and I worked in a Catholic school for many years. And I highly value all of the certain aspects of all of those traditions. Hey, Chad.
Howdy. How are you?
Oh, hey, Chad. What's up?
What's happening, man? Well,
It looks like it's
Paint the
going to be a
roof.
fancy bathroom.
it is.
This
It
is
is
a,
going to be a fancy.
It's an. Oh, I thought you were talking about me. My bad.
You guys are both
I can't
working.
see. Yeah.
Yeah. What you guys talking about?
Orthodox, whatever stuff, and how funny it can be.
Oh,
Yeah.
Just my experience of looking for a church home, I suppose.
hmm
nah, I don't need one of those.
You don't need one of them. I mean, that's kind of how I've been feeling lately.
Excuse me. I'm just kidding. Don't burn me at the stake. I have a church. I mean, I attend one.
How do you like that church, Chad?
We like it a lot. Yeah.
And what do you like about it?
Mm.
Or what?
Well,
What is
You
meaningful?
know, Chad, the theology.
well, we like the kind of somewhat older liturgy, Lutheran liturgy.
Mhm.
They have a nice big pipe organ that they're refurbishing. It's been there for like 150 years or something like that. You could tell that they're family oriented. So like generations of people have like been baptized there and died there, and so that's kind of it.
That's good.
Interesting.
Lived in.
It's only about 10 minutes from our house. It's in a very small locale. And there's like 200 people there. So it's not too big, not too small. I really like the pastor a lot. He came from Anglican, and now he's Lutheran.
Did he ever? Has you ever asked him why he made that change?
Not really. We didn't really want to. I can tell he doesn't really want to get into some of that stuff.
Ah, okay.
I can guess why. Politics, things that were changing in the Anglican Church, that he didn't agree with. Probably.
Okay.
Stuff like that. One day he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, you like Jordan Peterson, don't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I listen to Jordan Peterson." And he's like, "You ever heard of this guy, John Vervaeke?" And I was like, "What the hell, dude?" And then he also has watched a couple of Vanderklay stuff, so it's nice talking with him about some of that when we get a chance. We don't talk a lot about it, but I know like Vanderklay. One of Vanderklay's, like, I wouldn't say pet projects, but what's on his heart to serve is in his community is the homeless.
Yeah.
And my pastor, I would say what's on his heart is the elderly. So he's going to the nursing homes and spending time with those people, and he has like 3 kids, maybe 4. He's from Michigan, but was in Indiana for quite a while. So yeah, no, I think he's a good dude. they right away were like, hey, we'd like to nominate you for being on the finance and what do they call it? Stewardship and Finance Committee. And I was like, what? And so then I accepted the nomination and they voted me in. And I was able to bring some of the tools I've used from and learned from Alcoholics Anonymous and the service structure as far as like at district meetings using Robert's Rules of Order and stuff like that. And so it's kind of cool, man. Just being a part of, you know. So is this thing on? This thing working?
Yep. Gavin says, "What's the
yeah.
purpose of church, and why is consumerism wrong? What's the alternative?"
Mm,
Who
Luke,
said
you got any thoughts on
consumerism
that?
is wrong?
I
Who
do.
said? Oh, well,
Or
I don't think consumerism is wrong entirely. I mean, I think anything that we can point our attention to can be hijacked and turned to bad. So I think it's about. I think what's important is paying attention to motives and what has your attention. And so, I mean, I think religiosity can be wrong too. So,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
I always think of consumerism, always puts the image in my head of like kids' toys. And there's nothing wrong with kids' toys being consumeristic. But it's like, if that leaks out into spaces that aren't supposed to be treated that way, then it can be wrong, I suppose.
right, like, you know, I don't know, charging for absolution or whatever, like, you know, selling somebody's soul basically. Sure, I mean, all that stuff. Listen, like, here's the thing: it's people are the problem. We're the problem, and what our problem is that we're afraid and we're greedy, and sometimes, and we think we know things, and we're often trying to be helpful and overreach, make mistakes when we're trying to be helpful. I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff. I mean, none of these things in particular are, I think, bad, I guess. Of course, like, you know, then someone will say, oh, well, what about murder? Isn't that bad? Well, sure, it's bad. Duh. But, like, the point I'm trying to get at is, and this is a point I've been really, like, something that's been on my mind a lot in the last few days is, people were kind of making fun of me because I'm like, be here, be now, but I'm not trying to be corny about it. I'm just saying, like, let's you know, be a part of your community, you know, like be try not to be hijacked by everything that's out there in the world that's far away, and you know, it can be all consuming and take away from your actual home life, which is vital and paramount. So I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, guys.
Hey, no worries. I don't know what I'm talking about either.
Good.
Well,
We're in good company.
So,
Well, that's why I'm here, right? Because I do know what I'm talking about.
Sort us out, boss.
so I would tend to be on the side of saying consumerism is wrong, because I think of consumerism as just I mean, you could think of it as gluttony is a kind of consumerism. I mean, in anything where you are, to bring in my boy Peter Rollins, anytime you're trying to fill the lack, which he describes as the lack is this libidinal pursuit of whatever will make you whole and complete. Anytime you're trying to fill that with anything, I would say if you're trying to fill that with religion, that's what religiosity is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're here, Luke. I thought that was Lost Cause for a second. I'm like, bro, Luke is gonna love you, and then I'm like, oh, that's fucking Luke.
You're like you sound a lot like someone Luke would like.
Actually, just from what I've read about the things that you've said, Luke, I do think we would get along a lot.
Sweet. Well, let's. I don't know where you live, but let's
You
hang
guys
out.
are
Do it.
hitting it off already.
Yep.
Go to Luke's church.
There we
So-
go.
That's a question that I had. What is the biggest? What should one? What ought one look for in a church?
Right worship.
Yes, but like. So it's easy to say things like everyone agrees with that, right?
Hmm.
What good is right worship if you're an asshole?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's not right worship. That's the thing.
Uh-oh. I'm in trouble.
But to me,
Yeah,
the
that's
answer has been the people. Like, to me, it's the people that keep me around. Like, whenever I was growing up Southern Baptist, I thought the worship was terrible and corny, and they just like to cry a lot or whatever. But I always stuck around because those were my best friends. You know, I didn't have any friends in school. My friends were in church, and we still, you know, even though we thought a lot of it was ridiculous, we still took our questions at Bible study and stuff like that, and it was great.
Well, it is ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, like, this stuff isn't like, excuse me, rational stuff. I mean, it's crazy. This is crazy talk. There was a book I once read and it said, if you want to know God, you have to be out of your mind. And what it's saying is, get out of your head, dude. Like, you know.
Sherry would love that. Timestamp it for Sherry. Douglas Harding, headlessness. Got to be out of your mind.
You guys
Yeah, I
got to go and read Conversations with God. I keep trying to tell people, read this damn book, but nobody wants to read it. Everybody's just taking shit.
Listen, a big part of this community was founded by and orchestrated through Joey, and Joey's one rule is no homework. No, if you go tell me I have to read a book or watch a video, you can.
Have they made a movie yet?
Yes, you know they have.
I'll watch it. Especially if Tom Hanks is in it.
Okay, I have a question for you guys too. So,
Do
like,
it.
in that Andrea with the bangs conversation, or is it Andrea? That was fair. Sorry,
Andrea.
I when they were really, and you guys were talking about this earlier, but when people start talking about orthodoxy and the ortho love, there's a section in that video. It's like, it's right after Jacob asked the question to Andrea about being ortho curious, and he said, if you want to not be Protestant in being ortho curious, why haven't you considered Catholicism? And then the conversation that plays out after that, and then especially Sam's critique, it's like around the 2 hour mark, the 2 hour 1 minute mark. But Sam says a concern that he has, or a potential pitfall of all the ortho curiosity, is that because orthodoxy isn't predominant in the West, it's really easy to just be like, these are all the good things.
The grass is always greener.
And Catholicism is all the bad things, because I know Catholicism and I know Protestantism. And so then, and I made this comment in that stream too, is you end up with, I think this is happening to a significant degree, and I think it's inevitable, it has to be, is that we're getting a lot of Eastern Rite evangelicalism, where there's a lot of people converting to Orthodoxy that are still very evangelical and very Protestant. And here's the thing, I don't know how it could be otherwise.
Right.
Because
Well,
if this is a Protestant country, and if a lot of what your belief isn't just your ideas and how you self-identify in relation to those ideas, the culture is Protestant. Your family is Protestant. The churches are all Protestant. Tom Holland, the whole damn country is Protestant.
Yeah.
And so you can start practicing and participating within Orthodox liturgies and rituals, but even that culture, to a large degree, is going to be Protestant, full of a bunch of Americans.
Yeah.
Do you know why my wife and I didn't join the Orthodox Church and we stayed at the church that we're at?
Hit me.
Because it's 10 minutes away. The Orthodox Church is 45 minutes to an hour away.
No, I
Like-
completely agree, Chad. That would probably be my answer to my question before. Like, what's the best thing you should look for in a church? Proximity.
Yeah. This is a problem. We atomized ourselves into being strangers.
Yeah,
I'm going Mormon.
But the problem I have, though, is like my two questions. So I said this to Paul. I timestamped that. Well, and I made the question, and PDK just favorited it, so he saw it or whatever, hearted it. But my question is what does it mean to be faithful to your Protestant church? What are you being faithful to? What is it? What is Protestantism? What is the body? I have no idea. I really don't know the answer to that. Besides the people, because like what is the spirit? Like what is the corporate body that you're being faithful to?
Mhm.
I don't know.
See, I'm the wrong guy to ask because I wasn't Christian, so-called Christian, until recently, and I had already been serving God as an alcoholic in AA for like, almost 10 years, and so I feel like if I don't care what church you're at, man, are you there loving your neighbors? Are you there to be of service? To me, that's all that matters. I don't care what you call it. You can go to go to an atheist church for all I give a shit. I don't care.
So
Are you-
I agree with that, but here's the second part of my question that's a struggle for me, and you'll maybe get into it, is like, what does that mean for your kids?
Well, I think it's
Oh.
helpful what Paul the Apostle, not Vanderclay, he gives us. He consistently uses a couple metaphors. One is the body, so you kind of think of it as, okay, well, how does my body form in a healthy way? And there's a variety of ways to do that. But then he also uses the bride, the bride of Christ. Okay,
Mhm.
and those of us that are married, what does it mean to be faithful to our wives, right? Because some of us have relationships with other women that aren't our wives. Well, okay, what's the main difference? It's not just sexual difference, right? Because there are ways that we talk and get to know our wives that would be different from all other women. But then also Paul calls it the family of Christ, right? So when you're even in your local church, how is that your family? How do you contribute? How do you take their bullshit? How do you draw lines that there's certain levels of that bullshit I won't allow?
Yeah.
And so those are helpful metaphors in helping me see, okay, how am I in my church, and what do I expect from people that are in my church?
Yeah,
I do
well,
think
this.
No, go ahead, Chad.
I'm sorry. I was just to kind of reiterate, like this goes back to my here and now thing, because this is what we do. We start talking about stuff that's not here and now. And we start talking about these hypothetical things, it's fine. I understand. It's just something I noticed that we do. And so whenever I notice myself doing this, I start to catastrophize or awfulize everything. And that's where, that I might start becoming like a self-fulfilled prophet in my life when I'm doing this stuff. So I don't know, man. I'm the wrong guy for that particular question. Sorry.
So I'll try to relate it to like the here and now. Is as I've explored more into changing up into an Orthodox church, since my family is all Protestant, and probably will be for life type of thing, is their main attachment that they just can't get over. I shouldn't say it that way. Whatever, I'll say it that way. Their main attachment that they can't get over, I suppose, when we get into arguments, which I don't like to do and I dislike that I've ever done that, but is the Bible. It's like, well, the Bible says this, the Bible says that, and that's fine, that's cool. But I would say that's their main tradition, is like if they're Bible first Christians or not. And that's kind of why I don't see myself ever going back, is like I said, I don't like that I had gotten into arguments and stuff, because it's, makes people squeamish, and I feel bad for doing that to people, but that kind of seems to be the only thing that they're leaning on. Like I would take a wild guess that I know Paul Vanderklay is always like, oh, well, I'm Protestant because I was born and raised Protestant, whatever. I think ultimately his theological reasons would probably be he would point to Bible verses.
How's it going, Tim?
So I don't know.
But I don't know. I actually love that answer from Paul.
I do too. I like it. But I don't think that I just don't think, I mean, maybe it's true, but I don't know.
So here's my struggle, and I think it's different than Paul, is I mean, if you think about the Christian tree, right? It's one church, separates out, Oriental, and then one church, and then Catholic and Orthodox, and then the Reformation, and boom, whatever, all these branches. I think as you go further down, closer to the tree in the Protestant line, so like let's say mainline churches or cultural churches like Dutch Calvinism, Presbyterianism, Methodism, whatever, there was a very strong cultural and parish parts to that unity that I would argue that churches that are now formed predominantly around self-identity and propositions don't have. It's complete destination church around ideas. Like a modern day non-denominational like just general church has like people travel. I mean, I used to do this all the time. We would travel. I would find like the most theologically correct church, and then you drive like 2 hours if you have to get there because everybody else is wrong, right? I mean, you can't even go to church there. You have to go to church where everybody's right. Well, that's like, what is that?
Well, it seems like because a lot of people have started to think of church almost like an academic institution. This is where I'm going to go to be taught.
Yes.
And it's just like, that's not, the church isn't an academic institution. You know, there's more than just being taught or more than just receiving from a preacher. Obviously there's receiving sacraments and things like that, but there's also a relationship and like my wife doesn't marry me because of everything I give to her, but it's also what she's able to give to me. And, you know, there's so much more there. There's even some mysterious reasons that we might
Come
not.
on, Moises, your wife married you because you're correct about all the facts. We know it. You're a destination husband.
I was what they called a big book thumper in AA for several years.
I believe it.
And what that is exactly what you're talking about. Having all the facts, having the right procedure, knowing what's right, and knowing how to be able to tell you that you're wrong. And it's because I'm concerned about you drinking again. But really, it's more like I'm kind of concerned that you'll drink again and make me look bad as a sponsor. Plus, I can make myself look really good when I'm in the meetings. I can tell you about all the right stuff, and then I can call you out on your BS because you're an idiot and I'm not, of course. And then what I ended up finding was my world became so small that I couldn't even live in it. And all I basically want to do is kill myself all the time because it's like I'm now weaponizing spiritual principles. And so I am grateful to have had that experience, and I encourage anybody to go through it. Try to not hurt as many people as you possibly can while doing it. But I encourage you to do it because you won't believe it until you've actually had the experience of becoming that closed off.
If you have to, you have to.
Yes. And so I'm grateful for that because, like, I don't ever want to become a Bible thumper. Good God. That would just, I think.
Is that people's concerns now? Is that there's a bunch of orthodoxy thumpers?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
next.
There are a good bit
That's
of
the
them.
big turnoff to me is ultimately that. It's, again, the people. It's like they're either good and I like it or they're ortho bro fanatics, and I'm like, I'm out, dude. I hate this.
I mean, the thing is, isn't that part of the human condition? Is that
That's not an excuse.
So
that's what I'm saying. There is no excuse for the human condition. That's why we need.
So I don't think it is, and the reason I say that is because that we lose all agency when people just absolutize and totalize something to just be like, well, that's just what it is to be a person. Well, then we're all fucked, essentially.
I mean,
There's
that's part of my theological worldview.
Well, I know it is, but
And
it's
you're
not
wrong.
part of mine.
The problem with that is that it does allow me to secretly have a little wiggle room to act like a fool, and then I can say,
Yep.
well, that's just the human condition.
Well, the
you
thing
know?
is, it doesn't excuse it in my mind. It's saying wherever you're going to go, you're going to find somebody doing that wrong, and we want to encourage them not to be that way. But don't be
Right.
surprised when you find it.
But here's the thing:
Oh, yeah.
is mind colonization, thought colonization ubiquitous? I don't think so, because I would say fundamentally Orthodoxy isn't colonizing. I don't actually think Judaism is colonizing either. You can be a Jew and think a lot of different things. You can be Orthodox and think a lot of different things.
Mhm.
You
they
can also
don't
be
keep
Protestant and think a lot of different things too.
No, not in some churches.
Yeah.
Hey, for all the ortho bros out there, I got
You can come to my church.
all you ortho bros out there, I got something I want to ask you. If you're so concerned about your country, because I imagine half the ortho bros out there are like, kind of leaning into the right, probably just saying.
Yeah.
What would you say about how when the Russian Revolution happened, that the Orthodox Church was the head of the state when that happened? Was it not?
Well, so I've been
So-
enough in these circles. They would say that they lean into that mythology very much of like the king was right. It's very reactionary. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just saying. It again. Back to I've said this before. The grass is always greener, and once you start going further and further, the grass actually gets so green that it actually turns black. So good luck with that.
It's funny you say that. You're talking about the unification of Orthodoxy, and so I have an ecumenical group every week, right? And it's dominated by Orthodoxy lately, right? There's just been 3 to 2 or 5 to 3 or whatever. So there's a fellow that we met that calls himself the Archbishop of the Port of Spain, and he is an Oriental Orthodox, okay, and he's very liberal in theology too, and so he's sitting there, and he's a nice guy. He's from Queens, New York, like me, right? And I see the Ortho Bros just they just cringe because now they're in the same. Now they're in my car. In a way, and you have all of these people that are claiming authority under the church or whatever the case may be, and then you have this person who's claiming the same, looks the same, right? He's like he's dressed in his priestly garb, and he's claiming many other things in similar tradition, if not the same. And so, a friend of mine, the next day we talked, and he was like, "Dude, this was the first thing that really rocked me in a way that I hadn't been rocked before," because he's an Orthodox guy for about 3 years, I think, and he's an Ortho bro. Anyway, I find it to be interesting when these sorts of things occur because, like you said, Chad, the grass is not always greener, and so you're not somehow binding a person's conscience ultimately to your presuppositions. And you'll find that there's so many people that have different thoughts and opinions on this stuff. And it's
I love
interesting.
your voice so much, Bruce. God, you have a sexy
It's pretty
voice.
epic.
Oh, thanks.
Pretty
Is it the
epic.
voice or is it the mic?
It's both.
It's everything.
The
No,
name
it's
goes
probably the
well
mic,
with
though.
the voice, though. The name matches the voice.
Mike
Oh
helps.
yeah, it's so Bruce.
So
dude.
this idea that there's unification and basically single thought, single personality, and we can have an entire structure that binds everyone together and stops all sorts of division is a joke.
But
Right.
that's not unity, right? That's not even what a body is. I mean, that's
Well,
Do you
it's a
guys
claim
know-
of unity,
here's-
rather. It's a
here's
claim
one
of
thing-
oneness.
Here's one universal that should bind us all. It's pretty simple. It's called death. We
He's
all
right
die.
on.
There ain't no escaping it. It's the great equalizer, but we all want to ignore it like it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, if you're looking for some places that have significant community where people are constantly breaking bread and feel relatively good amongst one another, go to an LDS community. and you'll find that's a facade, but it is there. There is a lot of community, but they're also extremely vain.
Yeah. Well, we're not willing. I don't think that we're willing to just let other people be where they are. You know, even in our own, like, I think this is what we have in the corner. I think so much, for as weird as we are, we do have a level of tolerance that is probably a bit uncanny. So that's pretty nice.
Mhm.
And it does remind me a little bit of being in AA meetings, because I'll tell you what, I don't like everybody in AA. I just don't. In fact, probably most of them I don't. And they certainly don't like me, because I'm opinionated and all this stuff, but like, we're united under one thing, that we can't beat this thing, and by ourselves. And so we're submitting to this idea of, we're going to try and protect these principles at all costs. And that means keeping my mouth shut when it's necessary.
You know, that reminds me of a friend of mine that I grew up with. And when we got to high school, he was a really awkward guy. His dad and my dad were close friends growing up. His dad was awkward too. And when I would introduce him to new people, I say, "Hey, this is my buddy. If you ever get to know him, you'll regret it." But it was one of these things where there was so much about him that I didn't like. He wasn't very funny. He was rude a lot of the times. He wasn't very grateful for anything. But he was my friend. And it was one of those things, if somebody ever threatened him, I had his back. I would put myself in harm's way to throw him down if somebody got down on hard. And it was one of those things where it's like, because we grew up, he was family to me. And again, I think this is why the Apostle Paul calls us the family of Christ, because there are going to be people that we don't like all the time, and that's okay. And it's okay not to like people. And throughout my whole life, I have so many family members that like are ridiculous on like deep levels. But they're my family, and I'm always going to be there for them because they're family. And so I kind of take that spirit into my view of church, like the people that I call church, especially on a local level. So they're part of my family of Christ, and some of them I don't like, some of them I don't agree with ideologically, but they're part of this body. And I don't know how to like understand and define that and all this in detail. But going back to that family aspect really helps me.
Yeah, it's good. I learned a long time ago that there wasn't going to be any AA meeting anywhere that was going to provide for me what I really wanted. It'll give me what I need, but it'll never provide what I want. And that's just a fact. And then I started realizing that it's probably going to be the same thing about any church that I ever attend or any place I ever go to, period. And so I learned that it's not about what I can get, but what can I bring? And I know you guys might think that's corny, but that's a really good principle to live by.
Yeah, that's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
That's right.
I've got to head out. I've got fucking homework and whatnot. So
You should do
All
that.
right, buddy.
You'll be responsible.
have a good one.
Andrew, it's good to see you, man.
Yeah.
Good to
as
see you,
well, Tim.
Andrew.
Let's catch up another time, all right?
Tim, what do you think?
Tim. Hey, Tim.
Live louder, Timmy.
I think that if you think people stick up for their friends here, like you haven't seen enough. I've heard almost half a dozen people on various streams be very distressed about the way that they've been treated either recently or in the past in the TLC. And I was thinking about making a spreadsheet to keep track of it so I can talk to all these people.
I'd like to see the spreadsheet.
Me too.
But yeah, I mean, like, Andrew has been saying some very interesting things recently about the sort of bickering, the sort of like, phallus measuring and hair splitting about all the religious groups. that just seems to go on and on and on and on. And I chatted him while you guys were talking. He didn't respond, but I was like, "Is this what you were talking about?" Because it's like he's said some things that are deeply touching to me about how there are some people here that are in dire need of some meaning and are in crisis. And the constant, ubiquitous sort of coda of just bickering over religious principles or histrionics, like, is not helping those people. And like, they want to know where they can go to get that help or get that support or find that community. That's what I think. That's what I've been thinking about, is how to answer his question. Because it doesn't seem to be here.
Well, how would it? I mean, how do you think? How do you think it would look in this little community? Because I would say that I've known lots of people throughout the, I don't know, whatever, 3 or 4 years I've been a part of this, that I think have gotten a lot of help. I mean, I've had tons of conversations with people about very personal things, but I don't do it. I don't do it in like a live stream on YouTube. Rarely. Sometimes we get into those things, but I agree with you too. Like all the endless like bickering and precision about theology is tiresome to me. Like that's when I just like click off and I listen to like music or a comedy podcast.
I think the question should be reversed, is like, not what should we see, but what should we see less of, or what should we not see? I'm going to do an impression for you, and you just tell me who am I impersonating?
Can I guess already?
Heretic. He's a heretic. He's a blasphemous heretic. Who am I impersonating?
I don't want to guess. I feel afraid.
Probably Jacob.
That fear tells you something. Whether you want to listen to it or not, it, doesn't.
I just told Jacob to shut up.
But like, I heard Jacob and Bruce go at it one night to the point where it like made me sad for the rest of the night.
I stopped engaging for that very reason with that guy.
It's awful. It's truly awful. And like, I think what Andrew was very emotionally trying to express was that like, it's not just that there's a problem, it's that like the problem is so obvious and it's just got to stop, and somebody has to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and be like, hey, why don't you shut the fuck up?
So you're calling more for specific persons to speak up versus like some sort of systemic structural.
Well, I was definitely one of those people back on the BOM server that would speak up and tell people to shut the fuck up when I felt like they were stepping out of line, but I was removed. All the security cameras got removed. And so, like, when I was told that I ought to kill myself and I complained, I was told that maybe my behavior was such that I deserved to be told that. And then I was banned. And so, like, who is left who's going to stand up to somebody who feels entitled to call someone else a heretic? I mean, that's gross, and it should be called out. But it's done so much, and it's so like, I mean, is this like, what is the hierarchy here? Is it whoever has the key to the StreamYard? Is that who gets to talk?
Well, I mean, hopefully, I think it's so. Couple things. I would probably agree with you in general that I think, for example, Jacob is. I mean, this is a commonly held opinion. Everybody talks about this. PBK talks about it all the time. I talk about it all the time. Jacob is very bombastic and I think unnecessarily mean at times. And he's done it to me too. And I think, in general, I would say if you ask Jacob just outright, I think he would say he likes me, but if he thinks I'm being wrong or stupid or ignorant about something, he will say that in just like a very mean way. So I am perfectly willing to say that, but then on the other hand, Jacob is his channel and the just chatting and all that happened organically. People were just going to his place, and he's tried to move. Like right now, we are on Randos United with Moises running it because that's what Jacob facilitated that. This isn't his StreamYard. He's not running this. He's not controlling it. He doesn't want control of it. Good on him. I don't know. I agree with you. I don't like that stuff, but I don't know how to stop it without implementing certain kinds of what I would see as authoritarian control.
You won't stop it. You just call it when you see it, here and now. That's what I do. Now, you have to be willing to pay a price for that, because my experience is once I call somebody out, I always think I'm going to feel better when I do that, and I fucking never do. I always hate myself. But, I imagine Jacob doesn't really love himself as much as you might think he does, just like the rest of us. And so, I don't know, that might be an out of line statement to make, but it's just my observation. If I was Jacob, I don't think I would be able to like myself as much as I think I would like to, because I'm an asshole, and being an asshole is very expensive. And so do I love Jacob? Yes, and just like I love you, Tim, and I love you. We have, as often as we can, private conversations. And I kind of wish that whole thing was so weird that you got banned. I have no idea what the hell happened there. But I don't know, what would you?
It was probably Joey. Joey just has a fast trigger, and Joey didn't care. He would just be like, "This is my place. You don't have to be here."
Right.
But the argument that I would make is that, and I wish Moises was here to hear this, because I think he needs to hear.
Bailed?
Yeah. Is that the second this whole propositional participatory language, this telos crap, right? This little Dungeons and Dragons game you guys are playing with scripture it's all well and good. It's fun, right? Obviously people are having a lot of fun. The game ends the second that people start being told to kill themselves. At that point, a big boy discussion needs to be had, and we but the fact that the game didn't end and it entered another level of Dungeons and Dragons, that.
Can I have that?
That's, yeah, just let me finish real quick. That's terrifying to me. And I said something on Grim Grizz's server or on his stream the other day that got taken out of context. And I said, I pray that you all do not get what you deserve. And I didn't say, what I meant by that was, look at Ravi Zacharias. The warning signs were there. People just didn't pay attention. And unfortunately, you know, that organization got what it deserved. It's destroyed. His legacy is ruined. And it's like, if you guys can't do the right thing when a good guy who's a little brash and a little opinionated is being told to kill himself, then, you know, some bad things are going to happen when you guys start buying plane tickets and hotel rooms with some of these people. And that's what I see happening. And I'm terrified for the weaker members of the organization who are going to get preyed on because the security cameras were removed.
I was just going to say that I agree with the idea that like we could do a better job. And what's interesting is anytime you try to point out how things could be better, it can be perceived as a threat. The ego can emerge, people get defensive. And so like that's kind of my experience in many places and in many encounters with people, is that I'll come in and say, you're making a mistake. And then all of a sudden I'm banned, right? And it's because we're not good at being humble and treating other people as if they have something to offer.
So,
Yeah.
so I have like some genuine questions. First off, I didn't know that ever happened to you, Tim, and I don't think I was around when that happened because I'm pretty sure I would have just been like, "That's bullshit," and that's not cool.
The cameras are gone. The system was created such that you don't know when people are banned or why they were banned. Like you can't have a system that is just when that happens.
Well, but I'm talking about the specifics of like when Tim was told to kill himself or whatever. Like I don't even know who did that. I don't know what all that was. But if I had been there, I'd have just been like, "That's an asshole thing to say." And,
Yeah, agreed.
but also, I mean, I think I've had personal conversations with Joey about both of you. So it's not like I've probably advocated for everyone who's ever been banned that I knew of to not have been banned. And Joey just thinks I'm a ridiculous bleeding heart liberal who,
I mean, that's fine.
Who would have, huh?
It's good for you to be that in some ways. It's okay, you know.
You know, who couldn't probably run this kind of organization because it would just eat itself super fast. I mean, that's basically Joey's opinion. If I'm wrong,
Oh, I see.
and you think something different, Joey, whatever, correct me. I don't know if Joey will watch it. Probably not. So I don't know. So when you guys are saying things can be better, I agree, but I don't know how, especially from my own perspective, where I don't think you can systemically make things better.
So I mean, we do have justice systems, and there's a pattern for. There's businesses that do it. There's all kinds of organizations that do it, such that people don't get abused and harmed. Right? It's happening right now in just hundreds and thousands of organizations. It's not hard.
But like what? Can you name some specifics? Because I bet there's counter specific.
So if I go to my company and I go, if the same thing happened at my company, yeah, I would get fired if I start telling someone to go kill themselves. Right? Yeah, I would get fired. Also, if I were to come in and go to the head honcho at the boss and say, "This is how I think you could do things better," and even do it in a public way, they're not going to fire me. They're actually going to say thank you because I actually work for people that appreciate feedback.
But
And then
all of these
furthermore-
scenarios are okay, good.
But furthermore, the screws would be put to the celebrities who have authority and responsibility like PBK, and they would be publicly asked, are you comfortable supporting and being a figurehead for a community where an individual was told to kill themselves, then told they deserved it, and then banned? Like, are you comfortable being the figurehead of that community, whether you like it or not? And let people publicly see his response. Because if he says yes, that's going to give people a lot of information that they didn't have about what this community is about.
The difficulty is whether or not someone provides an open format, states that we have a place for everyone to speak their minds and will ban people depending on the severity of their circumstances. But when you wish to take an organization and not have a top, like Luke was saying, systemic authority, you're going to have these sorts of problems. So you could state you want a board of people to direct the behavior of individuals and police, essentially, or you could state that we have a place that's open and we can police ourselves. And so in that scenario, you would just empower the individuals around you. And I would say, Tim, you're doing a good job of that right now, of telling us to speak out against retards that do things like this. You're just going to continue to empower the people that are around you. Now, if there are particular egregious things that lead to, I would say, illegal behavior or something along those lines, then yeah, somebody would have to come in and do the banning, right? Someone has to hold the keys, or someone has to own the deed. You know what I mean? Someone has to start the things up. But one or the other is authoritarian or letting people police themselves. I'm gonna lean on the police themselves position. Otherwise you're going to have to make everyone upset because there's such stringent rules on people's.
But here's the truth, though, Tim, too,
conversation.
though, in what you're saying, for sure, is there are bigger personalities and charismatic people who maybe have strong temperaments and are low in agreeableness, who bully people, and those kinds of people, I mean, can really carry a lot of weight and force. I mean, it's the whole Knights and Mooks thing, and there aren't a lot of people. I mean, in general, I don't have a problem. Like, bullies piss me off. Like, the people that will test my pacifism are bullies, because I'm just like, other people are maybe scared of you. I'll beat the shit out of you. Like, I don't care. Like, I'll find you in real life and beat the shit out of you, because I don't like bullies. But also, like, so that's legitimate. I mean, you want your friends to stick up for you. But also, like, hurt people, man. So, like, what are we going to do? Eye for an eye until everyone's blind, you know?
By the way, I do have keys here. I don't know how many people do. And I will say, it's like, I think Jacob did put up money to help make sure these things happen, because I think he wants it to be bigger than himself.
Money for what?
For this StreamYard.
Oh, for the price of subscription.
Money. Yeah. And that's a question. Like, I've raised that question when I was in BOM. Like, how do you actually collect money and decide how the money gets spent? And I'm interested in all these questions because, I'm interested in parallel government. How can we do justice systems and elections and taxation and all this stuff?
Yeah. I don't disagree that there should be the shared responsibilities. I don't disagree with that. But I also think community should police itself more than the other way around. And you break glass in case of emergency to have somebody come in and lay the ban hammer down, right?
Well, I mean, even that choice of doing a ban hammer, like, I can understand. I like the idea. I don't think it got implemented, that if you do something illegal, you get banned. Like, I guess that's what Elon Musk had originally said, but didn't follow through with, because he's a dishonest character. But you could actually just do these things where you have a limited amount of things you can say. You go into a prison channel. You can only say one thing per day or one thing per year. And maybe you have read-only access, right?
So then how do you determine whether or not somebody actually said something?
Well, the process would be that when someone needs to be punished, or someone wants someone to be punished, there would be a claim of injury. The claim of injury would initiate a process so that there can be a decision on what course of action should be taken. The harshest form of action in this virtual space is just being exiled, right? In my opinion.
Well, because part of that is going to be, there's not going to be enough people paid to be our babysitters, to do those sorts of things.
There's plenty of volunteers.
No.
I mean, I volunteered for years. I know that.
I know, but you're a volunteer. Now imagine things start popping off, dude. People are going to start gaming that system just to watch it and to try and make a game out of it.
So you can actually make it so that you only can join a Discord server if you have a cell phone, and you can receive text messages. So there are ways to make it harder to enter into your community, so that you can't just very easily create 100 accounts, right? And then the thing is if people are acting up and then you get moved into a prison channel, that provides an opportunity for error correction. Where, as a moderator and admin, I might throw you into a prison channel, but I may have made a mistake. And so then I could then receive feedback to learn, hey, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have thrown them in a prison channel. But if you ban them and you do it in silence, in the darkness where nobody can see it, there's just no opportunity for error correction for the person who was banned or the person doing the banning.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it from like from Joey's point of view in this way. It's like part of the thing that his problem was that he had too much of a workload, and so then the other part is
Well,
like
he's
I'm
not
not
here
saying
anymore. Like we could just
just
talk
hang
about
on,
okay.
just hang on a second. Because here's the thing, like how it may be. How can I'm not saying that this is true, but like in Tim's case, so what if somebody says, "Oh, Chad the alcoholic told me to go kill himself" in a voice chat, and it was just the two of us in there, and it's like, well, prove it, right? And like, how do you do that? So then you just ban them. So then what? Now you just ban both people, so that justice is totally served, or how do you do that?
I mean, so Chad, I think what you're getting at is the danger of elevating victimhood to like the very top of the hierarchy. Is like then victimhood can become like the newest postmodern
Weapon.
power grab tool to
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
like that's the danger on the other side of the
Right.
of the pendulum, you know.
Right, because I think most of us want real justice with this stuff. We don't want people to be told that stuff. But then, with, like the other side of that is like somebody's gonna be a troll and game that system, and it's like
Well, this is being recorded to 3 channels, and if someone were to say something nasty, there would be evidence, right?
yes, this is a totally different system than like the voice chats in that we had in BOM. You know,
could remove voice chats in BOM if you wanted to.
you could, and you know, like or like in the case of one of the other players, when he would get out of line or he would say something I disagree with, or I thought he was being a bully, and not only him but a couple of other people, I wasn't afraid to say it. And like, I don't know how the hell I didn't get banned. I don't know, but
Well, you didn't call the owner of the server a bully or anything, you right?
no,
Yes.
no. But
Yeah, there's some people who are beyond criticism, beyond capacity for criticism.
Right. But you know, I did talk with Joey about like certain players in the game and how you know these guys are kind of out of line, and you know we had our discussions about that, and it's tough, man.
I think it goes down to like just normal state of nature. Like hurt people, but good people are good people. You know what I mean? And like before we start instituting any type of rules or authority, what if we just tried to be the best people that we could be today, right now? Show the most love and compassion that we can be right now.
But you don't
You
think
know,
people are
like-
trying to do that?
I think that we can do better. You know, like for instance, if you see someone get stepped on in a chat, stick up for him. Say, hey, let him finish what he was saying. You know, and just little micro precedents like that of like, hey, we're not going to talk over each other. Hey, we're not going to dismiss each other. Like for instance, when Andrew was sharing something the other day that was very emotional to him, Moises was kind of uncomfortable and just started blathering. And Lance interrupted him and said, hey, Andrew, thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Thank you. You know? And I think that sets kind of a micro precedent of like who we are and who we want to be, rather than just, oh, I need to get my little 2 cents in. Like when I'm talking, there's always a clock running in my head of like, you have been talking for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, like wrap it up, because I know that, you know, I project this fear onto others and I see somebody else going on and on and on. It annoys me. And so I don't want to do it myself. but that just goes towards my quality as an individual. And quality individuals make quality communities. And so I would say,
Part of that's just personality. You're just pretty empathetic, I think. So you're thinking that and then projecting it on other people's, but then you're also projecting, assuming everybody else should be like that or even can be like that, which isn't true. You know?
fair,
Mhm.
fair and noted.
Yeah, it's we have to try to be the best we can be, and we're all gonna have strengths and weaknesses, right?
Well, and
it'd
yeah.
be good if we figure out like how we can complement each other and be of most service possible, right? I
Yeah.
don't need to be the leader of any organization. That's just not me. But I'm tech support. I can really help with tech support.
Right. Well, it's difficult because you know, even if you say to be a good person or be the best you can be, you know, what's the standard by which best and good are derived? It's difficult to apply that, right? You either make a standard and people have to live under that standard, or you have to float with the idea that there's a goodness that people have and a best that people have that aren't the same as yours.
Well,
you know,
that's
I mean, there are
true.
some basic tenets, I think, that most people would agree for sure.
Yeah.
Common use of the word good and best. But there are nuances, and I believe most of these issues are around the nuances of those problems. As far as I can, you know, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
telling someone to kill themselves is beyond the nuance, but there are other interactions that, you know, might rub you the wrong way because it's not the same definition of good that you would have. But
Well, I think some of the guys that Tim's talking about are guys that are blatantly disagreeable and very harsh, and it can be very difficult to keep composure when these people are around. And the benefit I've seen with them is that they do stretch me a bit, because I'm going to run into these types of assholes in real life, so it's a good practice, but it also makes it yeah. Some of these guys, dude, they are very hard to talk with, and I think that they actually get a kick out of seeing people stumble over themselves, or
yeah,
you know, they get a kick out of kind of bullying people around, and they get a kick out of being able to do that and say, well, you can't prove that I did that. You
See,
know?
I don't know. I mean, I try as best as I can to practice radical empathy. So, like, even a lot of these things, it just seems like to me what you guys are describing is almost a genuine psychopathy. And statistically, I mean, psychopaths are like statistically almost non-existent, like legitimate psychopaths. Now, that doesn't mean that there's, you know, on a gradient, more unkind people than kind people. Of course there are. But this is where I don't know. It's like my buddy Cal and I talk about this a lot, and I think it allows me to not only have grace for other people, but even myself. Is just like, and I truly believe this. Like, it probably seems like a bullshit sentiment thing, the kind of thing Chad says, but I think everyone is really doing the best they can. Like, I genuinely believe that.
You're
And
wrong. You're
except
wrong.
for psychopaths. Like, psychopaths are they're like an exceptionary group. Like, they are
And
not
this
as well as they can.
this space may actually promote more breeding ground for psychopathy. It may be a different
Yeah.
number than it will be at the grocery store.
Yeah,
But
there
also
might be
the
a
problem is, like,
selection.
how do you know who's really a psychopath?
yeah, you
Well,
don't.
I'll have my psychopathic tendencies
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, part of the internet in general has an influx of people that have these sorts of personalities, and then you also have to dissect that into the number of people that are willing to talk about these sorts of things at length with individuals on the internet for hours on end, and so that's automatically changing your statistic, right? The average personality quirk in that group. I don't know that that's avoidable. It's going to be inevitable.
Yeah, I got to get back to work. I just wanted to say one last thing. A positive note is that the personal relationships that I've made in these spaces are the precious metals, are the gems for me. You know, the private messages, the private calls, the text messages, the reach outs, and that has developed more community for me with just a few people than sitting in voice chat with 20 people for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I'll say that Chad, the alcoholic, has just in being a part of my life in the few years that I've known him, he has changed my life forever. I will never go back. I will, he has pickled me, so to speak, just in knowing him. So, like, Chad is being the change that he wants to see, and it is effective in and of itself because I believe that I am a better person, not just for knowing Chad, but for having difficult private conversations with Chad, where he said, like, hey man, I didn't really like this when you said this, or I don't think this is true. And, I know that he's coming from such a good place through his demonstrated compassion, empathy, and also truth seeking that I've been willing to put my ego aside or my scars aside and open up to the fact that I might need to apologize or say that I'm wrong or just, suffer the guilt of making a mistake and try not to do it again. So thank you, Chad. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Gavin, Bruce, Maryland Pride, and Lost Cause. Stop walking underneath that ladder. It's bad luck.
I've been trying to avoid it this whole time.
See you, Tim.
Thank
See you
you,
later.
Tim.
See you guys.
Love you, man.
Love you
Good
all.
to see you.
Be well.
Love you too, Tim.
Wow.
I just, Luke, I just wanted to respond. I said you're wrong, and I wanted, anytime someone says that, it's like, well, what? What are you talking about? Well, it's just we have different goals. Like that's what I came to understand with Joey is his goals were just different than my goals, and
Yeah.
I'm not even saying his goals were wrong, but there was a conflict of interest between our goals, and so there's a question. What is Bridges of Meaning, and what's the goal of Bridges of Meaning? And like, I don't know. And I've raised these questions with some admins and Bridges of Meaning. But yeah, if people are explicit with their goals, I can try to be of service to their goals instead of my goals.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem.
Well,
people are not doing all the same values or goals, like you said. What are you going to do with that?
We care, but our capacity to care, our capacity for care, is related to our goals, and our value hierarchy and all of that. And we're just very different people. We have a lot of different people. We have a diversity of people.
Yeah.
And what should those goals be? That's the confusion, like in all of these relationships, is I don't know what everyone's goals are. I was asking earlier, what's the goal of the church?
Yeah, I think part of the difficulty. Well, I'll just speak to myself. I don't want to say that this is the case for everyone. I find the place like this sort of medium to be interesting to speak to people in my found time while I'm sitting here coding and I need to talk to people because I work remote. But I'm not looking to this place to replace my church community otherwise because I have a strong one. And so it's hard for me. I imagine there are some people that invest in it in the way that they would invest in their church family or friendship. For me, it's not like that. I'm coming for, a particular purpose, which is to literally just chat or talk about, difficult things with, difficult people, but not because I'm looking to build a specific community because I don't have that void. But other people, and maybe Tim was one of them, maybe you are, Gavin, maybe Luke, I don't know, but like I feel like this place attracts people that are not getting fulfilled in their communities locally as much as they probably should be. And so you're going to have difficulties there.
Yes, sir.
So like Chad is working while and so is Lost Cause, right? But there are some people that literally have no other thing to do with community outside of the internet, and this is where they do it. And it's a different investment, in other words.
So the difficulty that I see with that, I agree with a lot of that, Bruce. I think the way that I would frame it is this is a Douglas Harding thing, but it's kind of living in the as-is world versus the as-if world. The as-if world is the world as you imagine it, or like that you would desire it to be. your idealistic world. The problem is that world's not real. And so like the as is world is the world as it is. And so no matter who it is that's coming to this community, and to whatever degree they're participating, they're doing it because they're finding value and meaning in it to some degree. And you could sit
Agree
here
on that. Yeah, agree on that. There's some value.
Right. And you could sit here all day and say, like, ought they be doing this? Well, who knows? They are. So
It's not ought they. I'm just trying to sort of explain why you have this nexus of difficulties
no, I
of
know.
worldview.
And what I'm saying isn't even
Yeah.
a criticism of
Yeah.
what you were saying. I just mean, I'm just saying kind of it is what it is.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so, I don't. My issue tends to be where I would butt heads with people structurally is people who start getting caught up in the as if world and weaving narratives and having goals and then wanting to impose that as if world onto everyone else and colonize this. Because I don't, I would say like you can't do that.
Well, they could try. I mean, that's kind of what they're doing.
Or I would say you shouldn't do that. And if you're very successful in doing that, I will stop participating.
Yeah, that's the difficulty though, is the ought claim there. Like, should you or should you not? And that's really hard because
I'm an anti-colonialist.
But what I'm saying is there's a standard by which people operate, and so now you have to impose your ought claim on them and make a case for it.
What do you mean? Me saying you shouldn't colonize?
Right. Or shouldn't do anything.
Well, it's more of like, I see it more as like a positive versus negative rights, Like you can demand a lot of positive rights that require something of everyone else, or you can just say you can't infringe upon me and insist that I do things that you want me to do.
Right. And we have to agree upon those negative rights, right?
Yeah.
That's the issue.
I just look at it as trying to be of most service as possible and trying as a problem. How can we be of most service as possible?
Yes, Gavin, but everybody's trying to do that.
Yeah, that in a way, yeah.
But
It's
everyone's got
fair.
different strengths and weaknesses, and some people are better than others at certain things, right?
Yes, but you could tell yourself a narrative that I'm really good at this, and I'm really good, and I have certain strengths and weaknesses that can benefit a community, and I'm really trying to help people, therefore I'm justified in what I'm doing.
Well, I mean, I'm a software engineer, and I can actually point at my skill set, right?
Same.
Right.
Yeah.
And so me and Bruce, we could actually be a part of the community.
Say that with doctrine.
That's
well,
right.
I mean, I think doctrine's a great place to start. The problem is where you're starting from, right? But I mean, everyone see the thing, like doing theology or anything along those lines, like Sproul said, it's the creation of distinctions. That's what happens. It's impossible.
I would say theology is a little bit different than, for example, like being a plumber or a software engineer.
Well, I would say yes and no, actually, because I mean, I've been a brick mason, a software engineer, and a theologian. Not a theologian, but an elder. And they all have their distinctions. There's all sorts of specifics once you get beyond the first basic assumptions. I mean, there are even in software development, we could talk about language specifics or branch strategies, right? All those sorts of things. There's distinctions of all over the place with these conversations.
When I first came in to these spaces, I remember I hopped over to the excuse me, the Awakening from the Meeting Crisis server. And there was like Mark who was in there. This was like a couple of years ago, and Mark was in there, Manuel was in there, and I was like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" They were like really standoffish, and I was like, "What the?" Yeah. It just seemed weird, and I was like, "Well," I even asked them, like, "So, like, what's the primary purpose around here?" And they're like, very like dismissive, like there is no primary purpose around here. We're not trying to do anything. We're not trying to build anything. Is what I was like. Oh, okay, and I'm like. So I don't know. I think maybe what might have been happening. Maybe have been a lot of people who have came in with their little ideas or their big ideas and wanted to try to implement something. And I think that should be paid attention to because I think it does speak to what is the baseline? What is there? There has to be something common that is among us that is drawing us together. And I'm not sure if we really found or explicitly named that, but I think if we did, there might be something useful there. But I will say I did come in to this space with ideas that I might be able to help out, given some of the tools I was given through the traditions that I had come from. And so, you know, I can see how that could be off-putting to some people, because they're like, people are really leery of people because people are fucking weird. And people, you know, so yeah, I don't know. I guess what I found when I started just doing my own thing, more and more of my own thing, and just speaking in my own voice and asking questions that I ask and things like that, people started basically paying a little more attention to me. Almost nobody pays attention to me, but like the people that like me, and that's great. So I guess the question is like figuring out what it is that we're doing, or what is the thing that is common that binds us. I think is very important thing to find out. And I don't think we're not really willing to examine that. And maybe the answer to it is we just want to be entertained, because that kind of seems like it too sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. So what some people are aiming at subscriber counts and numbers and
yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? Because this did move from Discord to this sort of streaming service, right? Mm-hmm. And so that already sort of raises the question, why? Right? Because what's wrong with private servers and discussions with similar groups of people? Now, I understand there's fracturing and all sorts of new places, but to go to the position where, hey, we're going to put this, to the public.
I mean, I want it to personally to leak into the real world.
Right, but that's exactly right. That's what I'm saying. So there is a value there that's somewhat shared by those who participate in the public conversations like this. That is, this needs to be or should be or ought to be heard by others who may not have the opportunity to hear it other places, right? So that's already like a potential barrier of values or difference in values for people, right?
Yeah. So one thing I noticed in the PBK Randos conversations was almost every one of those, almost every person said, I found this stuff and I found that there's nobody to talk to about it. And so that seems to be kind of a common thing. And what I really value, I think the most of what I value around here is when we get in these conversations and we get into kind of like where we're at right now, and it just feels nice. It's just nice, you know? It's not a bunch of bullshit. It's not like, talking about the weather. It's not, sometimes it can get deep, sometimes it gets hard, but when it's flowing, it's like, there's nothing nicer, man. It's so satisfying.
Yeah, it is.
It's satisfying to listen to.
Well, there's some people that say, well, you're not talking enough about the meaning crisis, right? We'll say that. But I would say in some ways we're doing more than we're talking, which is finding people who want to have similar conversations, good faith, finding meaning in the conversation, finding meaning in those scenarios. That's doing we're not talking about the meaning crisis. We're doing something about it, which is engaging with people in the very community that we're attempting to build.
Yeah, that's what Peterson talked about, is we have an instinct for meaning. And I think that's what we're pursuing when we're doing this. It's just nice. You get little bites of it. It's like satisfying, dude. And sometimes, I mean, there has to be something strong about this that has kept me here. Because I've tried to leave. There's not a lot of things that keep my attention the way that this has. So there's definitely something powerful. And I love it, man. Some of the best conversations I've had has been not only on these live streams, but like, in the Discord servers. And it's good stuff. Am I roboting already?
No, I hear you. You're good.
You don't sound as good as Bruce does, though.
Oh, nobody does, though.
He's in the car. I've joined from headsets before that aren't my mic, But yeah, I do sound. It's actually maybe it's a problem because I'm too distinct from everyone else.
No, that's good. We
It's
want
not a
that.
problem at all.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the conversations that come up on places like this. I will say there is a bit of a parallel though, and now I'll caveat it by saying many of these other parallels are materialistic sort of places, but there's a parallel to other places. If you've ever been a part of a community that's very passionate about something, and they constantly meet, whether it's virtually or in person, and you get this sense of community because you have a shared set of values, and you have a lot of conversation, and you really enjoy the community of those people.
Yeah.
This is somewhat similar to that. I don't know how much you guys like. If you've ever been a part of like, I'm trying to think, like a church, of course, but we go a little farther and say like a very specific niche community, like a development community, or a sport, or anything like that, right? Like if you go to the gym, right? And you're just like, I love that we can talk. We can not talk and just be in the presence of each other, or we can talk. We do things together. Like building community is, you get this sort of thing, and there's not many places like this around the planet with an ecumenical group of people willing to disagree and still shake hands.
Right.
Yeah, I remember being on Facebook and not being able to find anyone who would just have a conversation and be able to disagree. Essentially, like, can you even love your enemy? And so finding a place like this has been nice. Like the propositions, being able to disagree with people on their propositions, like, is very important to me. I'm a very skeptical person.
Yeah, there was a good video. I watch once in a while. I get these pop-ups. There's a guy that does videos, and he's like a cowboy dude. He smokes a cigar, and he's sitting in a chair, and he's got a real, like, Sam Elliott kind of voice. You know what I mean? And he did I think his name is what is that guy's name, man?
I don't know. I've seen him too, though.
Dry Creek Wrangler School.
Yeah.
And he had a video, I think,
Kinda
today
looks
that I
like
saw.
Dugan.
Yeah, and he said one of the most interesting things about talking to people that you don't agree with is you get to examine why you disagree with them. Why do I disagree with this person? And that it's like a self-reflection. So when you're in an echo chamber, it's difficult to bolster your convictions. But if you can articulate why you disagree with a certain thing or a person, now I think you're in a growth period. And I think he's right about that.
That's a good spiritual principle. That's a great spiritual principle. It's one that I have to try and keep in front of my mind all the time. It's one of the ones that we have in AA. Lay aside what you think is wrong.
Why do you disagree?
Setting aside prejudice doesn't mean throw them out. Yeah. Why am I wrong? Where am I wrong?
Well, not even that you're wrong, but more like, why is this person different around this subject than I am? You may not be wrong. They might be wrong,
right.
But you still disagree.
Right, but part of the seeking there is.
Oh. Did we lose Chad there?
Hopefully he was driving safely and nothing bad happened. I think that's the concern. There he is.
Am I back?
You're back.
You're back.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's about, part of it is being willing to ask, am I wrong? How might I be wrong? That's a good, valuable principle to have.
I
It's
agree.
just a willingness.
There's a time for it, and it's like, and especially in my situation, I can ask myself that question quite a bit. There's very few situations I get into where I just need to act without questioning whether I'm wrong or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's, so sometimes you don't have the opportunity to evaluate.
Yeah. Sometimes a tiger's about to hop out and get you.
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
That's really
I
what
find
mean.
that to be,
More about reflection.
yeah. Maybe after the fact, but yeah, it's great to talk to people that have not come to the same conclusions you have, because now you can bolster your existing conclusions, or you'll change them. But yeah, I really enjoy that sort of thing. But that's, not everyone's into that, right? That's tough.
All right, Bruce. So you're a Christian. Why are you a Christian?
Because I believe that the Word of God is inerrant, and it's been revealed to me that Christ died for my sins.
How was it revealed?
Through natural and special revelation. So I could see it when I go outside, when I get up out in the morning, when I breathe, and
So
I
is
can
it
also
a moment in time that, or like it sounds like it happens all the time now, but was there a moment in time when you didn't have it and when it switched?
I made a confession of faith at 19 years old that was genuine, but I think I'm relatively lucky compared to other people, and I say lucky, I should say blessed, that I never went through life thinking there was no God. I didn't have that presupposition. So and that, call it cultural, whatever you want, but I never found myself thinking I'm alone in the world if I didn't have my parents, but I've come, I've grown. It's for sure matured, but also I think sanctified.
Okay.
But I
But
made
like
a
when you
confession of faith
started-
at 19.
Like, so you made a confession and you start on the journey, and the amounts of revelations and the quality of revelations kind of increase in quantity and quality over time, or maybe you have periods of time where you're missing some revelations. It's like, how does that work out?
Well, I think that there are times where the flesh is strong, and it's difficult. I think there are also times where the Lord removes some assurance from you for your own sanctification, and so there are times where it's difficult, and then there are times where it's easy. And I think if you embracing those times of difficulty and suffering and leaning on God tends to sanctify a person, but not always is it easy, So I've been through many different periods, but I wouldn't say I'm getting constant new revelation. I would say that I'm getting more clarity from the special revelation that's been revealed to us.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'm definitely interested in people's kind of like a faith journey. It's interesting that you have these revelations, your mind changes, and as you would put it, it's almost like sometimes you're tested. You called it of the flesh, I think is what you were, something like that.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I think that mean you have a sin nature, or you have an imperfection, and you also have a transcendent or a spirit that is sanctifying you in the Christian walk. And so but it's hard. Our constant battle is against, well, as far as I see Christians, it's sin, death, and the devil.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
And you are a Christian, or you're not?
I don't know.
Oh, I see. Okay.
No,
I didn't want to assume that. So many people are, but
I don't have any book that's sacred for me, where I just say it's true and I know it's true. I don't have that.
Well, even just out the book, you have a number of axioms, I assume.
Yeah, I've developed some axioms for sure. Gavin is wild. I don't know. I am definitely wild. Yeah, I was raised wild. My father raised me, taking me to the river, and said the river is my church. And so I heard someone the other day, I think it was Andrea, talking to Paul. She's saying like there was a return, and so yeah, I've returned to my church as well. I'm back at the river.
Yeah, I see. I mean, yeah. So it seems like you're experiencing natural revelation right now, for sure, as everyone does.
Right. Yes. I actually lean heavily. I'm all natural revelation, all through personal experience. That's what I rely heavily on. Sometimes I see other people. I see other people expressing similar things as well. So that's nice when that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The difficulty is articulating it.
Oh yeah, and I'm not a good communicator either.
You could just write it in code.
Well, you can, for sure. Yeah, but you can live it. Like, what's important is that you live it. So that's what I try to do, is live it.
Yeah, I'd say the difficulty is now you can live in that perspective for forever. The difficulty is when someone lives in that perspective, but also tries to assert an art claim on another individual. So in other words, you'd say like, I'm trying to live the best, right?
Yeah.
How do you portray that that's best for someone else?
So I've been talking about plumbers today. I talked to Neutrino. He's in the chat, and I was saying, well, how do you figure out who the best plumber is? And it's like, well, maybe there could be a guild of plumbers, and they do work and record themselves doing work, and that can be reviewed by the customer, and it can be reviewed by everyone in the guild, and you eventually figure out who the best plumbers are, and they can be the teachers, and you can learn and become a better plumber, and you can even monitor the growth and your ability to do, plumbing. So,
right.
Yeah,
so there's two things there. There's like a standard by which they're measuring what's good, and then there's a consensus of people that come together and state this is correct.
That's right. And what's key is there would be a means by which people can make a claim saying this is a better way.
Right, but how would they defend it?
Well, you could go ahead, Chad.
The best plumber may not be the best teacher, though. That's and then so you're gonna pull the best plumber out of the field to go have him teach, and now the best work isn't getting done. Now he might be able to share some of the best things that he's done, or some of the good tricks of the trade, but a lot of that stuff is stuff that you find as you go along. So just speaking about plumbers specifically, I mean, this is what happens is word of mouth. Usually, a company that sticks around, that does good work, they stick around because they do good work, and so you'll know them by their fruits, basically. But sometimes, like the best, like the teachers that were at my tile school, I don't think they're the best tile guys at all. In fact, one of the best teachers I ever had was I worked next to him. And he was the best teacher. Also, I think he was the best tile guy. But I don't think it would be fair to Bob, the best tile guy, to have him come out and teach classes. Like he has a living to make. It's not. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that's relevant at all.
Yeah, it is difficult sometimes for people to teach, but the problem is when someone makes a claim and they have to say, like, well, if we take plumbing for instance, which I know very little about professionally, but if you're going to make a claim, the only way you could either say this is good, but I can't really tell you it's good until you watch it in 30 years and things don't break, right? Or I can give you some set of parameters that states it's well within these specs, right?
Right. Well, someone has to create the specs, and someone has to actually make the specs better, or be able to set different specs for different situations and cost targets and whatever. Right?
Yeah, someone has to create. That's exactly right.
And we often end up with specs that are outdated, right? Or even sometimes we'll have specs that they're too complicated for what the goal is, but lots of problems there.
Yeah, difficult.
I think my point is that you can actually say this is a mistake that you could make, which would cause this thing to stop working under these conditions, and then you could actually run that test, right? So there's all this whole list of things that you should not do, of mistakes you can make, and if you go into that trying to be a plumber and pretending to be a plumber, you're going to have to learn by making the mistakes yourself for the most part, unless you have a teacher who's aware of those mistakes. And what I've done is gone on to YouTube, and I've learned how to build a deck, and I've learned how to remodel my bathroom and do mechanical work in my truck. And YouTube's amazing. Clean a fish. I know how to clean a fish. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can go learn. And if there's a better way to do it, someone will make a video, and all of a sudden, eventually it raises as a signal. We don't do that kind of stuff with certain kinds of knowledge, and we could even do better. Like, I would like to be able to know who the best plumber is in my area.
Mm-hmm. But then it's tough, right? Because how do you determine the best in that situation?
Well, it's the one who's not making mistakes, right? Say the one who avoids the mistakes. Yeah. They do what they say they're going to do when they're going to do it and avoid making mistakes.
Yeah, it's tough though, right? Because you're having to crowdsource and use people's imperfect knowledge of a person to give you an opinion. Now you can try to say, for instance, like there's consistency, and I think that's probably maybe the better term than best plumber, most consistent. And I would say consistently, and when I say that, you want to know who's consistently making mistakes and who's consistently not making mistakes. But even that's tough.
I think we're
but I
getting
do
a lot
understand.
better with this process, though. I mean, unfortunately, we had to have Google to give us these kinds of tools, but I think it's happening.
That's right.
Yeah,
it is
it helps.
happening. And there's going to be a lot more development too. I think it will be good.
Well, crowdsourcing is nice, right? Because
What
you can get ideas from people that aren't filtered by the internet, but then eventually those start to be gamified, and so you eventually it's almost like you get back to word of mouth because you can't trust these sources of reviews, right?
Right. Well, it goes to the kind of the navigation problem that we have, where, I remember only however many years ago it was, 10 years ago, I would print out a map on MapQuest, or I would look at my route beforehand, and I'd have to know the town and know the names of the streets and all this stuff, and I'd have to work with that. And now I don't even pay attention to the names of streets or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, like, in some ways I've gotten dumber, to surprise. But, so like what are, that's why I get often thinking about the unintended consequences of right or good action. And it's like, it's kind of like at the church I'm at, they're talking about helping people in another state. And my wife was like, "Oh, why don't we help the people that are in our other city?" And they're like, "Well, we don't want to embarrass those people if we run into them in the grocery store. We don't want them to be embarrassed." And I thought, that's weird. Maybe that's it. But also, like, why would you want to eliminate the opportunity to do poorly so that we can be better and be held accountable? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A learning opportunity by making your own mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
Or being held to account by the person that we're going to run into at the grocery store. Gee, Chad, you really screwed up that tile in my shower. But instead, I can go over to Tennessee and do some tile in the shower, and then I can leave, and then I never have to worry about this person again, and then I never get held accountable, and then, like, nobody gets to say that I'm bad at that.
True.
And I think that that's a mistake. It's like, why are we doing that? We should be doing our own community. We're fully capable of it. And there's like 5 churches here. We should have all the problems taken care of.
Yeah, that's the essence of how I determine what's good and what's best, as I am just doing this kind of comparative analysis, learning from my mistakes, and hopefully, if people can tell me the mistakes that I can avoid, that'd be nice. But I've been learning from my mistakes most of my life.
Right. But you don't want, so it's interesting because I have kids. I don't know if you do.
I do have 3 kids.
Yeah. So there are things you want to impart, propositionally and knowledge-wise to your children that you don't want them to experience if they don't have to. Right. So
I want to avoid like long-term injuries.
Yeah. Well, for instance, like the easiest one, now this is a little slightly different because it's not going to kill them, but you don't have to, the child doesn't have to get poison ivy for you to tell them not to touch it. Right. But in that case, it's not, if they did touch it, then they'd learn maybe. But that's what I mean though by that. Like, for instance, you don't have to stick your head in the fire, you tell them not to. They don't want them to learn about that per se.
I like trying to tell them, and then that way when they suffer, they might remember, oh, maybe I should listen to Father.
Yeah, that's true too, so long as you're not lording it over them. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. It's true. Hey, don't jump off the roof. You're gonna break a leg. But at some cases, it's like there's another part of it where it's like, here's how you ride a bike. Very difficult to teach someone how to ride a bike with head knowledge and without them doing it. Right. It's hard to teach someone how to balance. Yeah, but both of those require some guidelines to start. Right? They're not wearing their shoes on their hands, so they saw you wearing your shoes. Maybe they saw you tie them and they're mimicking you tie them, but they still got some knowledge, whether it was propositional or experience, but they got something. They weren't just left to their own devices with no guidance.
Do you remember learning how to tie your shoes? I do.
I do. I don't think it was
Vaguely.
propositional. Riding a bike and tying my shoes was not propositional.
Well, it's not in a way, but it is in some other ways, right? Because like riding a bike is not propositional until you have to go and fix it when it breaks on the side of the road. You see, riding the bike is one thing, but fixing it and making sure you can continue riding it and maintaining it, that's a whole other thing. You see, so it's not so simple.
Dude, learning how to tie my shoes was a bitch. I think learning how to properly wipe my ass was a bitch, to be honest.
Do you remember? I remember.
Left-handed.
Are you sure you've learned how to do it yet, Chad? Are you sure? Because I might be able to teach you how to do it better.
The thing about tying my shoes that I remember the most is I had been tying my shoes for however long, and then I would see someone do a different method of tying their shoes, right? So I just do the regular, cross and tie your shoes. Well, I still do it today that way. And then I saw someone take two loops and do it quickly that way. Have you seen that method where you take 2 loops and you cross the loops and tie them?
Maybe, yeah.
And they were
No,
they were faster than I was. They were, so it was like, this is in my brain. I don't know why. I don't remember tying my own shoes, but I remember someone else tying their shoes differently than me and being faster than I was. And so they have this method where they take the shoe and they take the laces and they fold them into 2 bunny ears, and then they cross those and just to make a square knot. Right? You don't have to do the 2 knots.
Does that fall into propositional knowledge, or does that fall into perspectival, or like, that's really interesting.
I don't know, actually. I've never really thought about. I'm not into this world of knowledge philosophy, but or knowledge discussions, I guess, very much to know which one that is. But it is interesting. Well, it's like what happens when somebody shows up and does something differently than you.
Oh yeah, it'll stick to you too. Like, dude,
we should watch the candidates for president of the United States tie their shoes, right?
I was just talking this weekend with some guys at a men's retreat, and I said to all of them, here's something I can plant something into your head that will plague you for the rest of your sobriety every time you're in a meeting. I said, in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't call it a disease. It calls it an illness. And so, like, now every time that they hear somebody say that alcoholism is a disease, their brain is going to automatically flag illness. And it's such an annoying thing. I wish but that's how my mind works. Actually, my mind works exactly what you're saying, Bruce, where I see what I'm doing, but then I see what somebody else is doing, and how now I begin to question, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah. There's a trap in that, though.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's very, it becomes, but I think it's kind of like, it's just kind of how my mind is wired to look out for stuff. It's, I don't know if that's the hunter-gatherer in me or what the fuck, but.
I don't know. I think there's a lot there. I would imagine it has a lot to do with loving your neighbor in a way, because you're looking at what they're doing, and there's an understanding that you may be able to help them in some way, or not help them, or they can help you. So I do think that's true. And then also we're creatures of knowledge, and I mean that truly. A lot of people think that, like, the religious are Luddites or cavemen with no knowledge, right? They're just bumbling around and listening to what people tell them. And I actually think that many of the religious are craving knowledge and information and understanding. And I think that's true for all human nature. I do think that. Now, there are some people there's perversions in the flesh where there's all sorts of corruption, and people are mentally challenged or mentally ill, and it's hard for them to learn. But I think the curiosity that's there is a curiosity to where we're made to worship God, and so we're constantly trying to find community with His image bearers and to understand Him more. And that's kind of what we're doing. We're constantly looking at other people and gaining information about that and applying it or not applying it or comparing ourselves to that. and it's perverted when you start comparing yourself to a degree that starts to get prideful or lack of prideful, right? Or you start to feel inadequate, things like that. But I think that's what's going on.
Once you put the label on something as right, your mind is constantly looking for where somebody else isn't doing it right, or it's just like a pattern recognition, probably a survival mechanism. But like we know that like science is born out of religion and the desire to know God.
I totally agree. Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's like even technically or historically, that's where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm about to lose you guys in a second here.
Discovery.
I just know that I've been addicted to trying to get better at whatever thing it is in many situations throughout life, and so you end up learning about how to do things better, mistakes you can avoid, or tricks that you didn't know about, and then you see other people who might be making these mistakes that you've learned about, and I don't know. I've been coached and I've enjoyed being coached, and therefore it's my bias to want to go and attempt to coach someone else who may not want to be coached. They may want to just do it the way they want to do it.
But you're also a dad now, right? So you have that's a calling, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. I think that there's knowledge and there's wisdom that people gain as they get older, and that imparting the wisdom is pleasurable for sure. It's very fulfilling to do that with other people. But I also think it's a pull, a calling to raise others up, children or even peers. Yeah, it's a higher calling.
Yeah,
and I think that's where a lot of people can find their meaning when they start to get to a point where they're like, "Man, I've learned a lot. I'm somewhat disenfranchised with doing this work as much as I used to because I don't have the time, but I have a lot of knowledge and wisdom here, and I'd love to share that with others because they could also experience the same sort of experience I've had."
Yeah, but each of us have some wisdom. That's why I'm here. We're all bringing some wisdom, I think.
And watching people discover answers, like even if like you're trying to, like when I'm doing sponsorship stuff, I don't want to give somebody the answers. Like I just don't. I found that it's not useful. Then they become kind of ideologues. When they discover answers, however, now that's a lot different. So I think a good teacher helps a student to discover how to find answers.
We teach them how to learn. It definitely is helpful.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then and that's where wisdom is, I think, learned. Wisdom is acquired. It's in the search for things and in experience. Now, giving someone the answer and they don't have the experience. That's not wisdom. It may be a different kind of wisdom, peripheral to that particular thing, but I
mean, like being wise, right, would be maybe smart enough to know when to pick your battles.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's a good one. Yeah. Because shit, I don't have experience with that. Maybe I should just listen or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, acquiring new knowledge is so much fun for me, and it's not for others, maybe. And they would rather acquire, experiences or feelings of whatever it is. But yeah, I tend to be in that same camp. Whatever I get into, I'll get into to a degree that's, takes over my life for 6 months.
Yeah. What I learned about myself is, when I'm at my worst, is when I'm practicing my prejudices. In other words, a prejudice is having an opinion about something that's not rooted in actual fact or experience. And so when I go around toting around ideas that are actually prejudice, because we often think of prejudice as we're prejudging something. It's like a good example of this is like I never had sardines, and I'm going around telling everybody that sardines are terrible. Well, that's just a prejudice. I've never had experience with that. It's not rooted in actual fact. And now I'm teaching that to other people, and I think that's what that's like where I'm at my worst is when I'm doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, well, I would just say that it would do the coaching method. They would just be like, okay, you've never had sardines. Maybe it's best to say that sounds gross to me because I can't imagine wanting to eat lots of little fish.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know,
Yes.
so you know, because you've had big fish, right? So you know, it's not entirely. But I would say I do understand what you're saying when you're saying they're gross and you've never had them. Well, you know, okay, but you can make some assumptions in life.
Well, part of where I get this idea is I heard other people doing the same thing. People say sardines are gross. Ew. Growing up, you know, it's like anchovies gross, and so then I just adopt these ideas that aren't rooted in actual experience or fact. I'm just going along with the crowd. And now I can have my own experience and find out that they are in fact gross, or maybe they're great.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would say that's true. I think this is one of the traps people fall into when they appeal to consensus, because the consensus of people have told you it's gross, and you've taken their word for it.
I will say I'm reminded when you talk
Right.
about learning to tie your shoe. There's this mimicry that happens. Like there's definitely this real pressure for us to conform to people around us.
Yeah.
Like the same thing that allowed us to learn how to watch someone and tie our shoes or learn how to speak or whatever. Everything we've learned basically. It's also the thing that causes us to want to say that sardines taste no good, even though we don't actually know because we never even tried them.
Right. Now, my
Like,
whole life,
it's a double-edged sword.
how many of those are stacked up? Right. How many of those experiences that I don't have that aren't actual experiences are stacked up that I'm just like bursting with? You know, and I start my attitude starts to become developed by this prejudicial knowledge of life, and now I can't even trust you. I can't trust me.
Mm-hmm.
It just becomes easier just to not trust. It just so I always do this expedient thing. That's why Peterson's "Do What's Meaningful and Not What's Expedient" chapter was the most moving chapter of everything that I've ever read of his, because it was like, oh my God, like this is me all over the place. This is what actually helped me to find Christianity, and or where to the point where it found me, and that's what I mean. Examine where I might be wrong. That's what I mean when I say that. It's a good principle to keep in my mind. Do I actually have experience with this or not? I gotta be real about it.
So so you're Christians, or at least Bruce is, and basically I think I've heard Hezi talk about how there's this operating system. So you're basically handed an operating system, kind of helps maybe provide a program or this set of rules by which you're supposed to live.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, I can think, well, that's convenient. You no longer need to go in and question every little thing to figure out what's right and wrong, right? I think, Bruce, you were going to try to get there with the idea that I don't have a book, is that, like, how do you actually know what's right and wrong and good? And
no, actually I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what's right and wrong and good from a natural standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe you know very much what's, when I say right and wrong and good, I mean what's
I would say I sit in the
law in a way.
I've learned to get comfortable with not knowing. And then I mean,
no, it's one layer above that, though, is what I mean. Like, you have a knowledge of evil when you're born, and what I mean is what's right and wrong from a very basic standpoint without distinctions when you're born. I think Hezi is probably saying that you are given this by someone else, or is he stating that you're given this by God?
Well, I'm saying, like, Judaism is an operating system and Christianity is an operating system, or you could
Oh,
say
I see.
Catholicism is an operating system. And so you've got this wisdom from many people over many years, and you have been gifted this wisdom in the form of whatever religion you have. And so I guess the reason I'm pointing that out is because I can see how that can be useful for people, who are just trying to do the whatever goals they have.
Right, I see.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. There's all these things that people put out as propositional truths. Like, I don't know.
That's what used to bother me a lot about this, because I didn't have excuse me, I didn't have trust in when people would say, like, they would talk about what, like the obvious ones, like the virgin conception, and the resurrection. I would just get, or even like Christ saying that he was the savior, just bothered me so much. It just bothered me so much because I could not wrap my mind around it. Like, I always thought I had to have some sort of working knowledge of that, to like the mechanics of it or something like that. And it just would bother me, dude. And the miracle for me was all of those questions were completely swiped away. Didn't matter anymore. They were already they were answered. And I don't even know. Like, you're gonna ask me, well, can you answer those questions? Like, the miracle is I don't have to. I just know that it is. Just like I know that the sky is blue, right? But
yeah,
I mean, is the sky really blue? Because sometimes it's not, right? I mean, I don't know, dude.
I remember believing in Santa Claus, and then I remember like thinking I had discovered a perpetual motion machine. And it's like, I bring those up just as situations where I had really been convinced that I was right. And so they serve as a reminder for me to hesitate about being convinced.
Sure.
And then I don't know what would happen if I lived my entire life believing I know what the perpetual motion machine and nobody else knows,
Yeah. Well, I would say that my experience with this is different than being convinced that I'm right, because I don't think that falls into the category of right. This particular thing, and this is just it's like I know how I know I love my wife. I don't know how to explain that. It doesn't fall in the category of right, like I understand right. Like I understand how I can tell you 1 + 1 is 2, and that answer is right. I don't know if I'm getting that.
Yeah.
If I'm getting this distinction, because I would never use this. I would never use my relationship with Christ as a weapon of righteousness in the way, like, to prove to you, because I couldn't do it with words. First of all, it's not what, for me. My understanding of Christ is to do that. I know other people have their different theological ways that they feel compelled to express those things, and that's great. I think we need those people. I just don't think that I'm called to do that at this point.
Yeah.
I'm called to make expressions of my love and to ask him for repentance when I fail, and that's what I need to do. It has nothing to do with what you guys need to do. Right? My relationship is not dependent on what you guys do, or if I even could save a soul. Like, that doesn't even it's not even in like my understanding at all, because I don't believe I can save souls.
So if you go to church and there's some kind of a creed, for example, it's like,
yeah,
are you okay with saying the creed?
Yes.
Even if you don't, like, I guess for me, it's like I have a hard time saying the things that I don't know to be true. Like, or if I'm in the unknown space and I say, well, I don't know, how can I also not know but say a creed and be honest with myself or feel good about myself? Yeah.
I'm not in an unknowing space. It's weird.
But going through the creed is like something. It's like you're doing it as a ritual, or like singing a song, or what does it mean when you say your creed?
So, is this thing still going?
Yeah, it's still going.
Am I still running?
Yes.
Yep.
So for me, it's not. I don't. Again, the questions were removed and answered, but they are answered in a way that is inarticulable for me. And
right.
So, yeah, and I'm okay with saying the creed for a lot of reasons.
Okay.
If I'm at house and I disagree with how my wife makes dinner tonight, Am I going to tell her that I disagree with her? Some people will. I don't find it necessary. You know, if I find that somebody is wrong about a certain thing, do I really think that? And sometimes I do fall prey to this. I really think I can tell you that you're wrong, and here's how. And I really think it worked. So, yeah, I'm okay with saying the creed. My God is completely fine that I'm saying words because I'm a part of a family. And I guess that's what we do sometimes. But again, it doesn't mean that I don't believe that. Like, I totally believe in the virgin birth and all the weird stuff. Like, I just don't know if it's in my fate to know what those things, the details of those things.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know how my lungs are actually working. You know, I don't even know how I'm able to formulate words. To be quite honest, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Do I need to know how I'm able to formulate words to be able to think while I'm having a conversation? I don't.
Yeah, I guess
just get to participate.
Yeah, I hear you that you believe these things. So I just, you mentioned prejudice and saying sardines taste nasty without having tasted them. I'd say that's the conflict for someone like me. It's like I have a hard time with the Pledge of Allegiance and things like that. Because I don't want to say the thing just because that's what the family says. Just because I want to actually, when I say it, I want it to say it and mean it, right? So that's my struggle, my personal struggle.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's also, it can be embarrassing sometimes if you're surrounded by thousands of people saying the Pledge of Allegiance, for example. That's a very difficult situation if you ever just decide, nah, I'm not going to do that.
So, I mean, that's interesting. So you don't believe the Pledge of Allegiance? You wouldn't say it, or would you, right now?
I've been at a place in my history where I did not say it.
For what purpose?
At that time, so even the idea of the United States, I don't like the tax system. I don't like the idea of it being united. Like I would prefer it for it to be a union. I'd want to participate in it in such a way where, for example, all the problems that are at Bridges of Meaning, they exist in the United States as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not a very good thing that we have going on. It's got great things, but it's also got terrible things. So, and I have no way to actually shape it. I'm powerless to shape it. So,
in the United States, you mean?
Yeah, in the United States, that's right. So, like, I would make a better president than Joe Biden, for example, or Donald Trump. And that's not even saying much. There's people who'd be better than me. But I can't even get on the ballot, right? So it's stuff like that. And I mean, I could pull it local. So I've thought about running the experiment of going down to my local city council and saying, hey, I'm an expert in information technology. Can I set up cameras and record these meetings to the web, for example?
Yeah.
And I haven't done that yet, but I've thought about it.
Yeah.
How do you know that you would be a better president than any of the presidents that's ever been there?
So whenever I applied for a job with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, they ignored me, and so that's wrong. That's just number one, right? You can't ignore people who are willing and able to be of service and trying to help. And you can if you're like you just can't handle it and you would become overwhelmed. But my claim would be that I could handle it, and there are people who could handle it, right? You could at least send a receipt to say, hey, we received your resume, right? Automated receipt. I know something about software and scalable systems that are reliable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a basic example of why I would be better.
But you suspect you would be better.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect, and I've got a degree of confidence, and it would be nice if there was a system in place which allowed for people to get on the ballot and not have to become corrupted by a system which causes you to go out and get a whole bunch of campaign finance money,
Yeah.
But we don't have that system. We have a system where you get locked in a cage for growing plants, separated from your wife and children and family, and you have no way to even get on a ballot or even get an amendment to the Constitution for my state. It's the government's a bit of a joke. Anyways, tell me how you really feel, Gavin.
But not just here, though. I mean, that issue is not unique to the U.S., right? Of course.
Yeah, and that's why I like the idea of trying to create something in the virtual space. Like, could we try to do things right with a virtual space in an organization? And it's like, yeah, you can try to do it with your own company. You can try to do it with a church. You can try to do it, with this little corner, right? And it's not easy and it's hard. And I've run up against the same problems I would run up against if I were in any other country, I'm sure. Right. And it's a human problem. It's it's within us. And I boiled it down to when people say that we're doing things wrong, there's a defensiveness that can emerge within a lot of people. We don't want to consider that we might be wrong. Chad was been pointing at it just earlier. It's like, it's good to consider that we might be wrong.
Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting, though, right? Is like trying to get people to telling someone it's good to consider you might be wrong is difficult to make the ought claim without some standard to apply that they could agree with, right? So you'd have to say, like, you'd have to give them examples, and then even then you'd have to say, like, why is this correct? Right? For instance, like, it might be wrong to, eat babies, right? But how do you convince someone that it's wrong to eat babies?
Well, it depends.
They could have their own children,
That's
but
what
they're terrible people, right? Yeah.
It's all in reference to the goal, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're going to find that the answer is, I'm not wrong. I'm saying being willing to examine, am I wrong here? Now, clearly, it's wrong to eat babies.
Right.
But, maybe.
But it's not so clear, right? Depending on who you're talking to is a bit of the issue, right? So, like,
yeah,
you kind of have to, at some point, there's an impasse where a standard has to be applied, because you could be wrong, they could be right, but just because someone asserts it doesn't make that necessarily the case.
But you say a standard, but I would say a process. And I'd go back to when we were talking about the plumbers and how to figure out the best plumber. And so it's all in relationship to goals. So you specify your goals, and then you can analyze the plumbers and the work of the plumbers to know who was able to meet the goals or meet the most goals even.
Yeah, so there has to be some standard to apply when you're making a claim or an ought claim. You should do it this way. Why? Because. And then there's these standards.
Right. Well,
but if people reject the standard, now where are you?
Well, I'm disagreeing with this idea of a standard. Like in software engineering, we have OKRs, or jobs to be done, and user stories. So, for example, a job to be done, it can tell you the problem that needs to be solved, and a user story can explain, a way in which the job is solved, right? So it's a job to be done is like a goal. At some point, but then within software engineering, you might have a standard like, well, you should use uppercase letters for the names of your classes. That's a standard, right? There's a difference between a goal and a standard.
Yeah, but both are. I mean, so like the standards inform the goal. You know what I mean? They have to, like, I'm asserting that God informs the world, right? In creation. And so when you create your goals, you're standing on a foundation. And whether or not you want to admit that you're standing on a foundation, that's an issue. But you're standing on some foundation, and you're making goals and asserting all sorts of claims based on the standard that informs the goal.
That's right. And very rarely do we ever actually get explicit with our goals.
Yeah.
And very rarely do we actually want to measure our productivity or success in relationship to our goals. Right. That's kind of my main point. Right.
Yeah. I get what you mean, but that's sort of an implementation issue in some ways.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's like riding your bike, to implement there is a wrong way to ride the bike.
When you ride your bike, though, you also sit and you assume that the ground's not going to fade out from under me.
Right. Chad I think pointed at a Mark Rober video where Mark Rober learned how to ride the inverted bike, where you turn the steering wheel.
Oh, I've seen
and
that
the wheel
before. Yeah,
goes the other way.
Took him 9
Yeah.
months. 9 months to learn how to ride that bike.
Right, and then he could not ride the old way afterward.
That's right.
he relearned it. Yeah, I wonder if he was like a regular ship operator, would he have had less or more trouble, right? Or like if he were a backhoe operator, I bet you those guys could get it quicker.
I think there are people who are better at dealing with kind of that, being able to switch your mind into an inverted state.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it takes your whole body to ride a bike.
Wait, but there's people there's welders. My neighbor just told me about welding and how sometimes he has to use a mirror and everything's backwards when you're using a mirror to do
Yeah,
some of these
that's
welds.
rough, man. That would be so hard.
Right, and so you can develop an ability, and there's some people who can do it better than others, and some people have a very hard time doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might get it quicker, but it's still your whole body is going to go into this.
Well, I think that there's just skills to be like. What about like people on ice skates? You know what I mean? Like it's all. I imagine there are some people that are better than others at that skill, but I'm just saying Mark Rober is an interesting video, and I think he makes a good, solid point about that. But I am sure there are people that could pick it up pretty quickly and unlearn it. But
yeah, I'm just saying the implementation details. Sometimes implementations won't work, and sometimes they do work. And then among the ones that can work, you could, start to look at other goals like, well, how long can you ride that bike in that way?
Yeah.
So that's. I'm just advocating for people being more explicit with their goals and being interested in because then you can begin to make determination about what does work and does not work and what might even work better. So we don't do that. Like right now, I would claim there's a lot of stuff that's not working. And if you even try to go and help get things working, it's difficult. Like it's often impossible to actually be able to go in and help people get things to work.
It's trust. That's a trust issue.
Well, it's very hard for me to go start a bank. I looked into that years ago, and at that time I needed $20 million.
To start a bank?
Yeah, when I looked into it, you couldn't start a bank without 20 million. I think it has been up since then for the amount of money you need
to be recognized as a legal institution.
To be connected to the Federal Reserve
and to have
in the United States.
and to have protection.
Right, FDIC, and being able to connect, be able to get an account so that you can move money between the banks via the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how it works. My point is that a lot of things are broken, and we could fix things. Like I know we can fix things.
In some ways, it's broken, and in other ways, it's just in need of improvement. There's great utility in. I'm not advocating for large central government or central planning, but I can understand how it comes to be because there's great utility in centralization. Although I do think it falls apart. As a software developer, I see that problem all the time, right? Centralization,
they become self-serving such that they want to persist and survive, and then part of that is doing enough so that people don't remove you, but then also being interested in your own growth as well. So it can end up being parasitic in some ways, a parasitic relationship.
I get because now you have no longer are they existing to serve the goals of which they started per se. They're existing to serve their own goals, more so than the other, right? Because you could be altruistic, or even let's say you're not altruistic. Let's just say you see a need for a service and you also want to make money. Well, let's just you could take banking for an example, or a complicated one. But what you're saying is now they've lost sight of what made them the money in the first place. And you're now experiencing the brokenness of that self-centered, ideology.
I would say with banks in general, maybe it's just a lack of competition and opportunity for people to get into the market.
I would agree. That's true. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But in government, we don't have sunset clauses, for example. So, you get that thing created, and then it might be very hard to get it destroyed once it, if it stops serving its purpose, or if it or if it's no longer needed.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's interesting.
yeah.
It's
Jim, I didn't even know you can.
if you have
start
enough people with enough
I
capital,
wonder how many people out there that don't
it
even know
depends. There's a lot of ways to do it, but he's right. If you want to trade or be on the exchange with the Federal Reserve and have routing to and from your bank, also you need there's protections for people that put money with you, and you could not have that money. But also, if you start taking money from people, what do you do with it? And then how do you count it? Like there's a tax law as well, right? So how are you going to account for that money? Things like that.
Yeah.
So there's a million protections put in place that actually become impedances. Initially they were set up to help, but now they're hurting.
So when I was in high school, I did this thing called Government Club, and we got to basically LARP as people in government. We got to do. We did that with judicial systems and with legislative and all kinds of
It's like
stuff.
mock government, or there was a club. I can't remember the name of it. I remember that. What was the name of that?
Well, ours was Government Club.
Oh, it was called that. Okay, I think there was another one,
And
but
then
yeah.
I did another one called Boys State, and
Okay.
but I guess my point is we do have the opportunity to LARP as people in government in order to come up against the problems that everyone in government faces. Right? We can LARP as people who collect taxes and people we don't need the United States government for us to behave in that way in order to attempt to figure out how to solve some of these problems like elections and whatnot. But there's not a lot of people interested in that kind of stuff, honestly.
Well, again, I think some of this stuff boils down to trust issues. We have major trust issues.
Well, there's trust issues, but there's also being a good steward and wise. Both of those things exist.
Yep.
Yes, there's trust issues, but you can't be a fool. I mean, you shouldn't be a fool and just give resources and money to people, and just not eat or not live because you lost all your money because you were unwise, right? So there's a trust issue, but that's unavoidable in a way. So the government comes in to help, government or other organizations come in to help bolster that trust.
Right.
But
So
you're still putting your
part
trust
of part of that is figuring out the process by which people prove that they are trustworthy. Right.
Yep.
We take a test to get a driver's license, for example.
You're back at a standard there. Yeah.
Yeah. I recommend it at my work. It's I vocalized the career path I was interested in, and they talked about, are you sure? You need these strengths and weaknesses. And then I was like, well, I'll take a test so that you can know my strengths and weaknesses. But oftentimes we actually don't have those tests to figure out if someone is trustworthy and are they continuing to be trustworthy. But yeah, it's all part of it.
And then you have issues with the test itself, right? They'll say, well, these tests are not fair.
Well, there's a process by which tests should improve.
Right. So then you just put your trust in the test makers.
Well, there's a process by which you select test makers and the tests change.
Right.
Here's a really weird.
It just goes all the way down. Yeah, go ahead.
When I did OSHA, my OSHA 30 class, OSHA came into existence in 1971 or something like that. And they came into existence because they were to help protect workers, right? And a lot of deaths were reduced in that time. But every year, no matter what, there always seems to be at least 5,000 people die at work every year, no matter what. Isn't that weird? So you can try to reduce things, but some things I just think are like a lot of this stuff is just unavoidable. They're unforeseeable things. There's things you can't test for. The test you can't test for.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's off topic too much, but when I heard that, I was like, holy shit, that's really weird. But yeah, no matter what, there's at least 5,000 people. There's some other number, but yeah.
I'll bring up Temple Grandin. We may have listened to her with Jordan Peterson, and she talked about how they went in and transformed the cattle industry, and they only had to fire one. They had to do firings at one place, right? And they only had to replace the equipment at a few places. They were able to reuse the existing equipment and all of that. I mean, I think there are people who can do it, who can come in and make things better.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and maybe it's just a sign of incompetence of, if you can't accomplish your goal, or maybe you're trying to accomplish a goal that's just too expensive, and you have unrealistic goals.
How many people are protecting their fellows because they themselves know they are incompetent, so they're willing to lie about it? And so all this is kind of back to some Jordan Peterson stuff.
Isn't it always?
All right, I gotta go, guys. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
All right.
Yeah,
Nice
you
to talk
too.
to you, Bruce.
You too.
Yep. Thanks,
See you,
Bruce. I'm on my roboting road now, so that's great. Probably gonna
All right.
robot like a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, I think I should end it and go play the role of father and husband.
And thank you for spending time with me. It's a good conversation.
All right, I enjoyed it thoroughly, Chad. I'm glad you were here.
All right, brother. Have a good day.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, bye, everyone.